The suitcase stood upright on the back porch of Vale Point Lodge. One wheel caught in the warped boards, and the sleeve of Mara's black funeral dress pinched in the zipper. Through the screen door, she could hear forks touching china, and Paige laughing at something near the coffee urn. Mara tried her key anyway. It entered the lock, but would not turn. She was still doing that, pushing, jiggling, pulling the door toward her, as if swollen wood were the problem, when Celeste appeared on the other side of the screen. Daniel Vale's widow had taken off the small black hat she'd worn at the cemetery. Without it, her silver blonde hair looked strangely ordinary. "You'll break the key," Celeste said. "You changed the lock. We had the locks changed." During Dad's funeral, the locksmith had an opening. Mara stared at her through the mesh. Somebody inside asked where the extra cream was, and Celeste turned her head automatically toward the kitchen. "My clothes are in there," Mara said. "Paige packed what was yours. In one suitcase." Celeste's mouth tightened. "You have North Light now." Mara had heard those words at the attorney's office the day before, and still could not make them attach to anything real. North Light did not appear on the lodge map. It did not appear on the boat rental chart or the maintenance schedule. Her father had behaved for years as if no such place existed. Now, it was apparently her inheritance and her eviction notice. Celeste opened the screen door just far enough to step outside, forcing Mara back. She smelled like the lilies from the funeral home. "We agreed this would be less uncomfortable after the reception," she said. "We didn't agree on anything. I'm not going to argue on a porch. You put my suitcase on it." Celeste glanced down as though the suitcase had arrived without her knowledge. "Your father's death changes the practical arrangement. The practical arrangement was that I lived here. The practical arrangement was that you were helping while Daniel was ill." Mara looked through the door at the dining room. 30 people were eating rosemary chicken she had ordered, at tables she had moved herself that morning, because Paige thought the first arrangement looked too banquet hall. Daniel's old fishing friends had brought 3 pies. A pair of neighboring innkeepers stood near the fireplace holding white coffee cups. Nobody looked toward the porch. "He died 6 days ago," Mara said. "I'm aware. You could have given me a week, and what would be easier in a week?" The answer came too quickly to be grief. Celeste had been preparing for this conversation. Maybe while Mara measured Daniel's morphine, maybe while Mara slept in a chair beside his bed because his breathing had changed. Celeste touched the gold chain at her throat. "There's a room for you across the lake, is there? The estate inventory calls it a cabin. That isn't what I asked." For a second, Celeste's face changed, not softened exactly. Something tired showed through, then shut again. "There's money in the front pocket," she said. "Enough for a hotel tonight." Mara crouched and unzipped the pocket. Inside was an envelope containing $200 in 20s. Under it lay a toothbrush, still damp at the bristles. "Paige packed my wet toothbrush. She was trying to help." Paige once mailed back a toaster because the chrome felt judgmental. Despite herself, Mara heard the old rhythm of a family joke. Celeste almost reacted. Her lips gave a small, unwilling twitch before she looked toward the lake. The brief familiarity made the porch feel meaner. "You can come back Monday for anything genuinely personal that was missed," Celeste said. "Make a list first. Genuinely personal. Items belonging to Daniel stay with the house until the estate is settled." Mara thought of his room upstairs, his reading glasses on the nightstand, the dent his shoulder had made in the mattress, the mug with last chance bait tackle printed on it, though the shop had closed 15 years ago. For 3 years she had known every object within reach of his bed. Now they were estate items. Paige appeared behind the screen, carrying an empty platter. Her dark hair was clipped into a smooth twist that had not moved all day. "Mom, Ruth Bender is asking about decaf." "There's a labeled carafe beside the tea," Mara said. Paige's eyes dropped to the suitcase and rose again. "I found most of your things. Did my belongings frighten you? I wasn't sure what was yours. You've known me 17 years. That doesn't label your socks," Celeste said. "Paige." "What?" "I'm explaining." "You packed one shoe," Mara said. Paige blinked. Mara pulled the suitcase open on the porch. A pair of jeans, 2 shirts, underwear, a phone charger, her funeral dress, the damp toothbrush, and 1 brown work boot had been compressed inside, without folding. At the bottom was Daniel's faded green sweater. All 3 women saw it. Mara touched the cuff. The wool had gone thin where her father worried it between his fingers during bad weather. She had put that sweater over his shoulders 5 nights before he died. "That stays here," Paige said. Mara closed the suitcase. "It was an accident," Celeste said. "Then I'll bring it back Monday." Mara. She stood, pulled up the handle, and dragged the suitcase down the porch steps. The trap dress sleeve streaked through damp grit. Behind her, Celeste said, "Don't make this uglier than it is." Mara kept walking because she could not think of a response that would not make her turn around and throw something through the screen. The lodge parking lot was crowded with clean trucks and lake-spattered Subarus. Her own car sat near the maintenance shed with a handwritten "For Sale" sign on the dashboard. The transmission had begun slipping in August. Daniel had said they would deal with it after Labor Day, then after his next scan, then when he felt stronger. It started on the third try. Mara drove 7 miles into Bellwether with the suitcase lying across the back seat like a body she was failing to transport respectfully. The town had 1 traffic light, 3 bars, and a motel called the North Country Rest, whose sign had been missing the second R in country since spring. The desk clerk, a broad man named Stu, who sometimes delivered clean linens to Vale Point, looked at Mara's black dress and did not ask why she needed a room. "Sorry about your dad," he said. "Thank you. He was particular. That's a kind obituary." Stu scratched his chin. "He once made me take back 80 pillowcases because the blue stripe was facing the wrong direction." "That sounds like him." "He tipped me $20 after." "That also sounds like him." The room cost $98. Mara watched 2 of Celeste's 20s disappear into the register and felt, absurdly, as if she had failed a test. Upstairs, she set the suitcase on the bed and removed Daniel's sweater. It still held a little of his smell beneath the cedar sachets Paige used in the lodge closets. Soap, wool, and the medicinal sweetness that had clung to his skin near the end. Mara put it on. The sleeves ended halfway over her hands. She sat on the bed until the ice machine dumped a load of cubes behind the wall and startled her upright. Her phone showed 11 missed messages. Most were from people who had attended the reception and apparently had not noticed her absence until they needed something. "Where are the foil containers? Do we refrigerate the mustard sauce?" Nathan had written. "You okay?" Mara typed, "Your mother threw me out." The dots indicating his reply appeared, vanished, then appeared again. "I heard there was a discussion." She stared at the sentence until it became almost impressive. "There was a suitcase," she wrote. "Very little discussion." He called immediately. Mara let it ring twice before answering. "Mara," Nathan said. His voice was low. She could hear plates and conversation behind him. "Where are you?" "North Country Rest." "You shouldn't be alone. That's a useful observation." "I didn't know Mom was doing it today." "You knew she was doing it." A pause. Nathan was 30, 2 years older than Mara, and had perfected pauses that suggested decency without committing him to it. "She told me you had the cabin," he said. "So everybody knew except me. You knew about the will. I know the words North Light. Apparently I now own 2 words. It's a structure, luxury. There used to be a dock. Did there used to be a roof? I think so." Mara stood and crossed to the motel window. Beyond the parking lot, the evening sky was turning the color of bruised peaches. A logging truck shifted gears on the highway. "Why isn't it on any map?" she asked. Nathan took long enough that she looked at the phone to make sure the call had not dropped. "Dad took it off," he said. "I gathered that. He didn't want guests going there." "Why?" "I don't know the whole thing. You know part of it." "Mara, today isn't the day. Today was the day to change my locks." "I said I didn't know she was doing that." "And then you stayed at the reception." This time his silence did not suggest decency. It suggested a room full of people watching him decide which side of the lake he belonged on. "I'll come get you tomorrow," he said. "We can look at the cabin. I can get there." "How?" "I worked at a lake lodge, Nathan. I'm familiar with boats, not the rental boats." Paige collected the keys. Mara shut her eyes. Of course she did. "Let me help." She nearly said yes. That was the humiliating part. Nathan had been kind in small ways all her life, usually after failing her in a large one. He brought coffee after arguments he had avoided. He fixed the porch light after listening quietly, while Paige blamed Mara for breaking it. He was very good at helping, once help no longer required courage. "I'll call you," she said, and ended the call. The next morning arrived cold and bright. Mara paid for another night before she could reconsider, then drove to Pike's Marina at the south end of the lake. Most of the rental fleet was already stacked for winter. Aluminum holes rested upside down on timber racks, their pale undersides shining in the sun. Somewhere inside the repair bay, metal clanged, followed by a man swearing with patient precision. Owen Pike rolled out from under an outboard motor on a mechanic's creeper. He was in his early 60s, narrow as a dock cleat, with gray hair tied at his neck and grease along one cheekbone. He looked at Daniel's sweater, then at Mara. "You get lost on the way to a funeral?" he asked. "It was yesterday." "I know. I need a boat." "No." Mara waited. Owen pushed himself upright with a groan. "Lake's turning. Wind comes down hard after noon. I need to reach North Light." His expression went still. That was the first reaction anyone had given the name that wasn't amusement or evasion. "Who told you about North Light?" he asked. "My father left it to me." Owen looked past her toward the water. Across 6 miles of hammered blue, the far shore rose in dark pines and bare birch. Nothing on that shoreline suggested a house, a dock, or a welcome. "He did he?" Owen said. "Do you know where it is?" "Yes." "Will you take me?" "No." "Will you rent me something?" "Also no. I can operate a boat. I've watched you operate a boat. You dock like you're settling an argument. I dock efficiently." "You hit things efficiently." Mara folded her arms. "I have $102, a car that may never reverse again, and a cabin I've never seen. If you won't take me, tell me where it is and I'll find another way." Owen studied her for a long moment. Then he wiped his hands on a rag and walked toward the racks. "The red 14-footer leaks," he said. "Bilge can keep up if you don't get sentimental. That's your sales pitch? Not selling it." He pulled a ring of keys from his pocket and tossed them to her. "You bring it back before dark." "What do I owe you?" "Come Saturday and help me flip the pontoons. That's 6 hours of work. Then take the bus across the lake." "There is no bus across the lake." Owen raised his eyebrows. Mara looked at the red boat. Its paint had faded pink above the waterline, and one bench was repaired with silver tape. "Saturday," she said. He found her a fuel can, a life jacket, and an old paper chart. When Mara asked him to mark the cabin, he took the pencil, but hesitated over the far shore. Finally, he made a small X in an empty green section where Daniel's lodge maps showed only forest. "Your father used to make better maps than he made decisions," Owen said. Before Mara could ask what that meant, he turned away. The crossing took 40 minutes. Cold spray struck her face whenever the bow slapped down. Twice she nearly convinced herself Owen's pencil mark was wrong. Then a roofline appeared between the trees, low and gray, followed by the broken angle of a porch. The dock had collapsed at one end. Mara cut the motor and drifted close enough to see ferns growing between the boards. Beyond it stood a cabin with shuttered windows, a stone chimney, and a front door painted a blue so weathered it looked like memory. She tied the boat to a cedar trunk and climbed through knee-deep water, dragging her suitcase above the surface. On the porch, she found no welcome mat, no working light, and no place to insert the new brass key the attorney had given her. The door was already open. Mara put 2 fingers against the door and pushed. It moved inward with a long wooden complaint, then stopped against something soft. She leaned harder. A dead branch scraped across the floorboards and rolled into the room. The cabin smelled of wet wood, old ash, and the unmistakable peppery stink of mice. Light entered through gaps in the shutters, laying bright stripes across a table, 2 overturned chairs, and a braided rug that had been chewed down to its rope center. The main room was larger than she'd expected, with a fieldstone fireplace at one end and a kitchen at the other. Dust softened everything. Even the iron hooks beside the door seemed furred. "Move in ready," she said. Her voice went farther into the cabin than it should have. She left the suitcase on the porch and walked through each room before touching anything. It was an old habit from lodge maintenance. Identify the leak before moving the bucket. Find the breaker before blaming the lamp. North Light had a narrow bedroom behind the chimney, a second sleeping room with 2 iron bedsteads, and a pantry built deep into the coolest side of the house. A galvanized hand pump stood over the kitchen sink. The electric switches were the round, clicking kind Daniel had called widowmakers whenever he found them in old cottages. Mara tried one from the doorway. Nothing happened. The ceiling over the kitchen sagged around a broad brown stain. A corner of the pantry had been opened by animals or weather, and acorns covered the floor in such abundance that the mice appeared to be planning for several generations. The bedroom mattress had collapsed in the center like a sigh. Still, the windows were mostly intact. The chimney had not pulled away from the wall. When Mara pressed a screwdriver from her suitcase's small tool pouch into the sill, the wood resisted instead of turning to pulp. Paige had packed one boot and a screwdriver. Maybe the day had not been entirely vindictive. Mara crossed to the blue front door. Its latch plate hung from one screw, which explained why the door had opened. She tightened it, but the wood beneath had split. The repair would require more than optimism and a screwdriver. Outside, the lake flashed between cedar trunks. The property sloped gently to the water and rose behind the cabin into mixed forest. No neighboring roof showed through the branches. No engine sounded. The silence was not peaceful yet. It was too large, as if the place were holding its breath until she admitted she had no business there. She checked her phone. No signal. Excellent. Back inside, she opened cupboards one at a time. Mouse droppings, rusted pie tins, 3 cloudy drinking glasses, a stack of chipped white plates with a navy line around the rim. The pantry shelves were unusually deep and close set, each front edge labeled in faded pencil. Tomato, beans, broth, apple, peach. On the doorframe, someone had driven small nails at measured intervals and looped bits of old string around them. A kitchen built for more than weekend fishing. She worked the pump handle. It resisted, then gave a hollow wheeze. After 20 strokes, brown water coughed into the sink, bringing flakes of rust and the smell of iron. She pumped again. The water became less brown, but no more inviting. A noise came from the sleeping room. Mara froze with one hand on the pump. The noise came again, a dry, frantic scratching, then a thump. She took the fireplace poker from the wall and approached the room sideways. Her father's sweater caught on a nail, jerking her backward hard enough that she nearly swung at the doorframe. A red squirrel burst from behind the bedstead and launched itself past her face. Mara screamed. The poker hit the wall. The squirrel crossed the main room in 3 bounds, failed to find the open front door, ran up the curtains, and clung there staring at her with black, furious eyes. "You live here," Mara panted. "I understand." The squirrel chattered. "I'm not fighting you today." She opened both doors and stood behind a chair until it raced outside. Then she laughed once, too loudly. The sound turned on her halfway out. She sat down on the least damaged chair and put both hands over her face. At the lodge, the funeral dishes would be washed by now. Celeste would have put the sympathy cards in a neat stack, maybe by sender, maybe by how much money was enclosed. Paige would inventory the liquor and complain that Daniel's friends had opened the good bourbon. Nathan would carry folding tables to storage and keep finding reasons not to look at the empty back bedroom. Mara had spent 6 days answering questions: flowers, hymns, grave clothes, chicken or fish. Everyone had asked what Daniel would have wanted, and because Mara knew, she had answered. She had chosen the plain oak casket because he disliked glossy wood. She had found the navy tie without the trout on it. She had remembered that he hated lilies, then watched Celeste order lilies anyway because they photographed well. No one had asked where Mara would sleep after the reception. She wiped her face on Daniel's sleeve, immediately felt guilty, then angry at feeling guilty. A small desk stood beneath the shuttered window. Its drawer stuck halfway out. Mara pulled until it came free and spilled its contents across the floor. Mouse nesting, 2 square nails, a pencil sharpened with a knife, and a warped booklet with a green cloth cover. She picked up the booklet. The first pages contained dates, temperatures, and lists written in block letters she recognized instantly. October 18th. Drained east line. Pantry window puttied. 2 cords stacked. Daniel's handwriting had been firm then, before medication made the lines tremble. She turned a page. November 2nd. Pump leather replaced. Owen says part won't last. Owen enjoys saying this. Mara gave a short breath that might have been a laugh. Farther in, the entries changed to a quicker, slanted hand. Need more pint jars. June used last good lids. Ask D again about staying open through February. If we can heat the back room, there is no reason to send everyone away. Mara read it twice. The initial could have belonged to anyone, but she knew the handwriting without remembering how she knew it. A birthday card, perhaps, a note once tucked into a box that Daniel had taken away before Mara finished reading. Elise. Her mother had been dead 7 years. Before that, she had existed at the edge of Mara's life, as returned mail, canceled plans, and the occasional tense phone call Daniel never discussed afterward. Mara turned another page. The paper crackled beneath her thumb. A list of names filled the center, each followed by a week and a chore: June, kitchen; Owen, woodpile; Cal, dock braces; Rosie, linens. No surnames, no explanation. She closed the book. The quiet had changed. The cabin no longer felt empty. It felt interrupted. Mara slipped the notebook into the suitcase beneath her funeral dress, then dragged the suitcase inside and wedged the broken door shut with a chair. If the squirrel wanted its home back, it would have to use one of the many existing holes. She spent the remaining daylight assessing, rather than repairing. 2 porch piers had sunk. The roof split ran 3 feet above the kitchen, probably where a branch had struck. The chimney needed inspection before any fire. The pump might be drawing from a shallow well, which meant the water required testing. Behind the cabin, half concealed by ferns, a pair of sagging poles carried a wire toward the woods. Whatever had once powered Northlight had been disconnected long ago. She wrote everything on the back of Owen's chart because Paige had not packed a notebook. Roof tarp, door brace, water, food, bedding, lantern, 2 boots. The sun reached the tops of the trees sooner than she expected. Mara returned to the shore and found the red boat tugging hard against its rope. The wind had shifted. Small whitecaps moved across the lake in organized rows. At Vale Point, Mara would have closed the rental dock an hour ago. She looked at the darkening water, then back at the cabin. There was no safe bedding inside, no food except an emergency granola bar in her purse, and no way to make heat without risking a chimney fire. Her motel room was waiting across the lake. So was her car. "Don't get sentimental," she muttered. She loaded the suitcase, pushed the boat free, and started the motor on the 6th pull. The crossing took more than an hour. She angled into the waves to keep them from striking broadside, sacrificing speed for the privilege of remaining upright. Spray soaked her hair and ran down the back of Daniel's sweater. The bilge pump whined beneath her feet. Halfway across, the outboard coughed once, and Mara's whole body went cold in a way the wind could not explain. "Not funny," she told it. The motor recovered. Owen stood at the end of his dock when she finally entered the Marina Cove. He wore an orange rain shell and held a boat hook. He did not wave. Mara came in too fast, cut the throttle, and swung the stern within a foot of the pilings. Owen caught the bowline. Efficient. "My docking is better in daylight." Daylight was available earlier. So was useful advice. "I told you to come back before dark. It is not dark." Owen looked at the marina lights reflecting on the water. "It's emotionally dark," Mara conceded. He tied the boat, then reached for her suitcase. Mara nearly told him she could lift it herself, but her hands were shaking too badly to close around the handle. Owen noticed. He said nothing. In the repair bay, he set the suitcase near a propane heater and handed her a clean shop towel. An old coffee maker sat on a shelf between bottles of oil. He poured coffee that looked capable of removing paint. Mara held the hot cup in both hands. "You knew my mother was there," she said. Owen's shoulders lowered a fraction. "You found the logbook, one of them. There were 2. Where's the other?" "If I knew, I'd have said there were 2, and I knew where both were." She looked at him over the cup. "Why did my father erase the cabin from the maps?" Owen moved to the red boat and began checking the bilge as if the question had been about water level. Daniel had several reasons, he said. Name one. Shame. The word landed without drama. That made it harder to dismiss. "About what?" "You'll want to ask June." "I don't know June." "June Bell. Lives on Birch Road. Blue house with the metal rooster. She worked there. She made soup there. Yelled there. Once threw a frozen turkey into the lake there." "Why?" Daniel suggested she thaw it faster. Mara waited, but Owen was smiling down into the boat now, the expression private and tired. "Why won't you tell me?" she asked. "Because everybody around this lake has been telling your family's story, according to which Vale was paying them. June never managed that trick." He took a pencil from the workbench, tore the corner from an invoice, and wrote an address. "Go in the morning," he said, "not before 9. She considers dawn a personal insult. Mara folded the paper into her palm. "I need a tarp," she said, "and roofing nails, a pry bar, pump leather, food-safe water containers, lantern fuel, work gloves, and a second boot. I don't sell boots." It was worth asking. Owen studied the list she had written on the chart. "Planning to stay?" I own it? That wasn't what I asked. Mara looked through the open bay door. Beyond the marina lights, the lake was black, the far shore invisible. My father left me a room no one can reach safely after noon, she said. My family left me one shoe. I'm still calculating. Owen nodded as though this were a reasonable method. Saturday, he reminded her. Pontoons. I'll be here. At the motel, Mara found 3 voicemails from Celeste and 1 from Paige. She listened to Celeste's first message while peeling off her wet clothes. Mara, I understand you went across the lake. Before you make any decisions, we should discuss the practical state of that property. It may not be suitable for occupancy. The second was shorter. I wish you wouldn't involve Owen Pike. He has old resentments. The third arrived an hour later. If North Light is more than you want to handle, I'm prepared to make the cash offer I mentioned. It would give you a clean start. Paige's message contained no greeting. Mom says you took Dad's green sweater. That was not included in your bequest. Mara sat on the edge of the bed, wearing the motel robe. Daniel's sweater hung over the shower rod, dripping onto the tile. Her suitcase stood open beneath it. The green notebook rested on top of the clothes, its cover buckled from years of damp. She called the front desk and asked Stu for a phone book. Planning a social evening? He asked when he brought it up. Something like that. Mara found Belle June on Birch Road. She copied the number onto Owen's scrap of invoice beside the address, but did not call. Instead, she opened the notebook again. Near the final written page, in Elise's slanted hand, one sentence had been pressed so hard into the paper that it left grooves beneath it. If Daniel closes this place, he won't just be closing a cabin. Below it, added later in her father's block letters, were 4 words. I know. I did anyway. Mara called June Bell at 9:03. A woman answered on the 7th ring and said, If you're selling burial plots, I'm already planning to be cremated out of spite. I'm Mara Vale. The silence that followed was not confusion. Daniel's girl, June said. Mara, I heard you the first time. Owen Pike gave me your number. Owen gives people things when he doesn't want to answer questions. He said you worked at North Light. June exhaled into the receiver. Did he? I found a logbook with your name in it. Another silence, longer than the first. What do you want? I'm trying to understand what I inherited. You inherited a roof that leaked when Kennedy was president. So, you've seen it recently. No. I remember Daniel's approach to maintenance. Mara leaned against the motel dresser. Could I come talk to you? You can come. Whether we talk depends on whether you bring decent coffee. What qualifies? Not whatever they serve at that motel. June's blue house stood at the end of Birch Road, behind a fence constructed from at least 4 previous fences. A rusted metal rooster turned above the chimney, squeaking each time the wind shifted. Mara arrived with coffee from the bakery and found June on the porch, scraping old paint from a window sash. She was 70-something, broad through the shoulders, with close-cut white hair and a canvas apron printed with lemons. One lens of her glasses was held in place by red thread. She looked at Mara, the 2 coffees, and Daniel's sweater in that order. You kept his clothes, she said. It was packed by mistake. Most honest things in that family happen by mistake. June accepted a cup and walked inside without inviting Mara to follow. The kitchen smelled of cinnamon, onions, and hot metal. Every flat surface held either a jar or a tool. A vise had been mounted to one end of the kitchen table. In it, June had clamped what appeared to be a brass lamp fitting. Mara set her cup down in the only empty space. You still make things? She asked. I still fix what people make badly. June lowered herself into a chair. Show me the book. Mara removed it from her bag, but kept one hand on the cover. June noticed. You came to my house. It's the one thing from the cabin that tells me anything. It won't tell you enough. Then you do it. June took a slow drink. You have your mother's method. I barely knew my mother. That doesn't stop inheritance. Mara slid the book across the table. June opened it carefully. Her blunt fingers turned fragile at the pages. She passed Daniel's neat entries without reaction, then stopped at Elise's list of names. Something in her face loosened. She spelled Rosie wrong every time, June said. How do you spell it? R-O-S-A. Elise knew that. Her hand got ahead of her head. What was the list? Winter rotation. For employees? For whoever needed the work. Mara sat opposite her. At the lodge, at North Light. There are 4 beds. There were 6 mattresses if no one objected to floors. The point wasn't luxury. June tapped one name. Cal had a room in town but no heating oil. Rose's apartment was over a bait store that closed in October. Owen was divorcing his first wife and believed sleeping in a boat shed proved something. It proved I was stubborn, Owen had probably said. June gave a reluctant nod. He froze his mustache to a wrench. Mara looked at the list again. Why were they all at North Light? Vale Point used to shut down after the leaves dropped. Everybody got thanked for a fine season and sent away until May. Your mother thought it was wasteful. There were docks to repair, furniture to strip, linens to mend, preserves to put up. Enough work to keep a few people paid if the lodge stopped pretending winter didn't exist. Paid by whom? Vale Point at first. Then Daniel started complaining that the numbers didn't justify it. Did they? Depends which numbers you count. That sounded like something Mara's father would have hated. June rose, took a tin from a shelf, and removed 2 cinnamon cookies. She placed one beside Mara without comment. My mother ran it? Mara asked. Your mother pushed it. Running suggests order. June bit into her cookie. Elise could turn a simple idea into weather. She'd decide 6 chairs needed caning and have 3 of them apart before asking whether anybody knew how. Half our time was spent catching up with her enthusiasm. Mara waited for the praise that usually followed criticism of the dead. None came. People around here make her sound unreliable, she said. She was unreliable. The answer stung with embarrassing speed. June continued. She'd promised to collect you at noon and arrive at 2 with a lamp she found by the road and a story about a stranded motorist. She thought an apology was complete if she felt it deeply enough. Daniel was the opposite. He arrived at 11:45 and made you pay for the remaining 15 minutes. That sounds more familiar. They were very good together until they became unbearable. Did he build North Light for her? They built it with each other. Important difference. June turned several pages, then paused at Daniel's final sentence. I know. I did anyway. Her mouth flattened. What did he close? Mara asked. Just the winter work. First, he cut the payroll. Then he stopped supplying food and fuel. Then he changed the locks. Mara looked down at the sweater covering her wrists. June saw that too. Daniel liked patterns. Why? Because he was angry. Because Elise embarrassed him. Because Vale Point was taking on debt, and Celeste was telling him a respectable lodge didn't operate a bunkhouse for people who couldn't arrange their lives. My father was with Celeste then? June took off her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. Your father began making decisions with Celeste before he admitted he was making them with Celeste. Mara's coffee had cooled untouched. She knew about the affair in the vague, polished way families knew things they had agreed not to name. Daniel and Elise had been unhappy. Celeste understood the business. The marriage ended. Time passed. Daniel remarried. Each sentence sounded reasonable alone. How old was I? June put her glasses back on. Old enough to notice, not old enough to be told the truth. Mara's chair scraped the floor as she stood. June did not apologize. You asked. I asked what the cabin was. You asked why it disappeared. No, I asked. Mara stopped. She had asked several things, some aloud and some only by walking through the door. June closed the logbook and pushed it back. The last winter we used North Light, the furnace at Vale Point failed during a cold snap. Daniel moved 3 pipes, 2 employees, and a banquet's worth of frozen food across the lake. The cabin kept the lodge from losing half its plumbing and most of its staff. In March, he had the name painted off the lobby map. Because of my mother? Because if North Light had mattered, then what happened there mattered. Daniel wanted a clean story. Clean stories require throwing out a great deal. Mara put the notebook in her bag. At the door, June said, You need blankets? Mara turned. North Light eats cold, June said. Even in October. I have a motel. You inherited the cabin, or you didn't. That sounds like something my father would say. June's face changed. No. Daniel would make sure you had nowhere else to go before he said it. She led Mara to a hall closet and pulled down 2 wool blankets, a faded quilt, and a canvas bedroll. From the basement, she added an old hurricane lantern, a box of canning jars, and a cast-iron skillet heavy enough to discourage the squirrel permanently. I can't pay for all this. Good. I'd have to set prices. I can bring it back. You can return the jars full. Mara carried the first load to her car. When she came back, June was standing on the porch with a small frame photograph. Elise stood in front of Northlight, beside 5 other adults, all of them wearing work clothes and laughing at something outside the frame. She was younger than Mara remembered her, with dark curls escaping a red scarf. Daniel stood at the far edge, one hand resting on the porch post. He was looking at Elise instead of the camera. Mara did not reach for it. "I don't want a shrine," she said. Neither would she. Too much dusting. June placed the photograph on top of the folded quilt. "But if you're going to be angry, you should try being accurate." At the marina, Owen examined Mara's car loaded with blankets, jars, a lantern, 2 tarps, roofing supplies, canned soup, drinking water, and a borrowed pair of June's rubber boots. "Coffee worked," he said. "She insulted me for an hour. That's practically adoption." The lake was calmer, but Owen insisted on following in a second boat because Mara's load sat too low in the red 14-footer. He helped her carry everything up the slope, tested the porch with his weight, and refused to enter the cabin until she said he was invited. "You used to sleep here," Mara said. "June talks too much. She said you froze your mustache to a wrench. I had more mustache then." He climbed onto the roof while Mara held the ladder and called up tools. The split was worse than she thought, but narrow enough for a temporary patch. They laid tarp beneath a line of replacement shingles Owen had brought without mentioning, then reset the broken latch plate with longer screws and a piece of sound wood. By late afternoon, the cabin looked no less abandoned, but the door closed. Owen left while there was still safe light. Mara watched his boat until it became a white speck, then disappeared around the point. Alone, she unrolled the bedroll near the fireplace but did not light a fire. She ate canned soup warmed on a camp stove Owen had loaned her, sitting at the long table beneath the photograph of adults who had once filled the room. Darkness erased the windows. The cabin ticked, shifted, and scratched around her. Every sound proposed an animal larger than the last. Mara set the skillet beside the bedroll as a weapon, then realized she had left the screwdriver on the porch. A motor sounded across the water. She sat up. The noise grew louder, then dropped to an idle near the collapsed dock. A flashlight beam moved between the trees. "Mara," Nathan called. She opened the door but stayed inside. Nathan appeared at the edge of the porch carrying a cardboard box. He wore his lodge jacket and clean boots inappropriate for the shore. "I brought some of your things," he said. "Did you make a list first?" He winced. "Can I come in?" Mara looked at the box. Her second work boot rested on top. "What does Celeste want?" "She wants you to consider her offer." "She sent my other shoe as a negotiating tactic?" "No." Nathan shifted the box against his hip. "That part was me." He glanced past her into the room, and whatever defensive sentence he had prepared disappeared. On the table, June's photograph caught the lantern light. Nathan stared at Daniel and Elise standing outside Northlight. "I remember that picture," he said. "From where?" "The lobby office. Dad kept it in a drawer." Mara felt the cabin settle around them. "When?" Nathan looked at her, then away. "Before he told Paige to burn it." Mara looked from Nathan to the photograph. "Did she?" "Did she what?" "Burn it." "I don't know. I wasn't there when he told her. But you knew he wanted it gone." Nathan lowered the box to the porch. It was after the lobby renovation. There were old brochures, guest registers, tax files. Dad got agitated about what was being kept. Dad got agitated if the salt shakers weren't pointed the same direction. "I'm telling you what I remember. You're telling me the edge of what you remember." A gust moved through the cedars, pushing cold air past Mara's legs. Nathan glanced toward the lake. His boat knocked against the remains of the dock. "I should tie up better," he said. "You should." He picked up the box first. Mara blocked the doorway. "What? You asked if you could come in." "Yes." "You haven't answered my question." "You asked 6, the one about Celeste." Nathan's jaw worked. He had Daniel's habit of chewing the inside of his cheek when he wanted time. "She wrote out an offer," he said. "It's in the box. Then the box can stay outside. Your clothes are in there. She put a price on returning my pants. I put the offer at the bottom so you wouldn't see it first. That is not the defense you think it is. Mara, the cabin needs more work than you can pay for. Mom is offering $20,000. You could rent a decent place, get the car fixed, finish your program." The amount made her hesitate. Nathan saw it and immediately looked hopeful, which ruined whatever chance he had. "She offered me $200 yesterday. That was for the motel. I know what it was for. It was the amount she thought would get me out of sight before the potato gratin got cold. She's trying to make it right. She's trying to buy the only thing Dad left me before I find out why he left it. Maybe he left it because he knew you'd like it. Did he ever mention it to you? No. Did he ever take me there? No. Then that's a very confident maybe. The boat struck the dock again, harder. Nathan looked over his shoulder. Can we argue inside? Owen said the wind was turning. You spoke to Owen? He called the lodge to make sure someone knew I came over. Apparently he thinks I'm incompetent. He's observant. Nathan lifted the box and waited. Mara moved aside. He entered carefully, as if North Light were occupied by someone whose rules he did not know. The lantern threw his shadow across the stone fireplace. He set the box beside the table and looked around. This is worse than Paige said. When was Paige here? She wasn't. There's an inspection note in the property file. What did it say? Uninhabitable auxiliary structure, yet somehow worth $20,000 tonight. That's not what the cabin is worth. That's Mom trying to help you. Celeste has never overpaid for anything in her life. Nathan ignored that and looked at June's photograph. The office copy was bigger. Dad was standing on the other side. Beside my mother? No. Same group, different moment. Who took it? I don't know. Why did he want Paige to burn it? I don't know. You use that phrase often for someone with a management title. I manage events and purchasing. Dad didn't appoint me keeper of all family secrets. No. He appointed me keeper of his medication schedule. The words came out flatter than Mara intended. Nathan looked at Daniel's sweater and the room tightened. I offered to take nights, he said. You offered to hire nights. Because I have a job. So did I. At the lodge. A job can be in the same building where someone is dying. That isn't what I meant. It's what you benefited from. Nathan walked to the shuttered window and tried to look through a gap. Outside, water slapped the shore. You think I don't know that? I think knowing has been very comfortable for you. He turned. You lived there rent-free for 3 years. Mara went still. Nathan closed his eyes. That sounded like Paige. It sounded like all of you. I didn't mean it that way. How many ways are there? I meant Dad built everything around keeping you close. You say he stole your time, but you never left. I was leaving, twice. And then what? He got worse. He always got worse when you were leaving. The sentence seemed to surprise Nathan as much as it did her. Mara stared at him. What does that mean? I don't know. Stop saying that. I don't know what he knew, or what he did deliberately. Nathan pressed both hands to the back of his neck. I know when you applied to the carpentry program in Traverse City, he suddenly needed surgery. When you talked about taking the winter course, he decided the lodge couldn't afford a night manager. He did need surgery. I know. The lodge couldn't afford. I know that too. The cabin creaked around them. Somewhere beneath the floor, a small animal moved with professional indifference. Nathan said, 2 things can be true. Mara hated him for offering her a sentence she had needed before the funeral. She opened the box. Her second boot was on top, followed by folded clothes, her work gloves, 3 paperback novels, the framed photograph of her and Daniel at a fishing tournament, and the chipped blue bowl she used for oatmeal. Paige had wrapped the bowl in a pair of Mara's wool socks. The care of it was almost worse than if she had broken it. At the bottom lay a white envelope with Mara written in Celeste's narrow hand. Mara set it on the table without opening it. Tell her I'm not signing anything. You should at least read it. I heard the number. There may be conditions. That is not helping. Nathan sat on an overturned chair. It wobbled and he stood again. Do you have heat? No. Water? Technically. Food? June gave me soup. June Bell? She claims you have weak wrists. She has said that since I dropped a stock pot. Was it full? Of chowder? Mara pictured it despite herself. Nathan, immaculate even in work clothes, ankle-deep in chowder while June assessed his wrists. A laugh escaped her before she could stop it. Nathan smiled, relieved. She resented that too. The wind rose until conversation required effort. Nathan checked the lake from the porch and came back with his mouth set. I can't cross in this. No, I'll sleep on the floor. I have 1 bedroll. You take it. Why? Because you live here. The words were absurd enough to be kind. They ate the second can of soup. Nathan found 2 spoons in the box, his addition, apparently, and tried to open the can with a multi-tool. Mara watched him fail for 30 seconds before handing him the manual opener Owen had loaned her. "Your wrists," she said. "Cruel." Afterward, they arranged June's blankets on opposite sides of the main room. Mara took the bedroll beside the fireplace. Nathan slept near the door in his lodge jacket, using his life vest as a pillow. She expected him to complain about the cold, the floor, or the scratching in the walls. He complained only once. "If that squirrel touches my face," he said into the darkness, "I'm selling my share of the lodge. You don't have a share yet. Then I'm selling Paige's." Mara woke before dawn to the sound of him adding his blanket to hers. She kept her eyes closed. By sunrise, the wind had dropped. Nathan drank cold coffee from a thermos he had brought, left the second spoon, and carried the unopened envelope back to his boat. "Mom will ask," he said. "Tell her I'm calculating." He almost smiled. "Call me before you cross." "Why?" "So I can worry accurately." She watched him go, then change into dry work clothes and June's rubber boots. They were too wide and made her walk like a person transporting invisible furniture. Owen was already moving tools when Mara reached the marina. "You survived?" he said. Nathan slept on the floor. That explains the disturbance in local wildlife. 3 pontoons waited on trailers beside the storage barn, their canvas covers snapped in the wind. A man stood on a ladder loosening a battery cable, his dark hair sticking out beneath a knit cap. Luis Ortega looked down, saw Mara, and nearly dropped the wrench. "Well," he said, "Vale Point finally sent management." "I'm not management." "Then you're overdressed." Mara looked at June's boots. "This is a loan from a woman who owns a table vise." Luis climbed down. He was 34, solidly built, with sawdust permanently embedded in the seams of his work jacket. He had repaired half the porches at Vale Point and argued with Daniel about every invoice. "I heard about the funeral," he said. "I'm sorry, thank you. I also heard Paige put your suitcase outside." The speed of Laketown news should have embarrassed her. Instead, it steadied something. She packed one boot. Luis looked at the rubber boots. "And you took that personally." "Owen says we're flipping pontoons." For 4 hours, they worked without making grief the center of the job. Owen ran the winch. Luis blocked the trailers. Mara crawled beneath holes to secure straps and emerged with grease on Daniel's sweater until Owen ordered her to take it off before she ruined it. "It's already ruined," she said, "then stop helping." Around noon, Luis opened a cooler containing turkey sandwiches and 3 cans of ginger ale. "You still at the motel?" he asked. "North Light." His hand stopped over the cooler. "You've been there?" "Twice." "You're staying there?" "I stayed last night." "With no heat?" "Nathan produces some body heat, mostly through anxiety." Luis handed her a sandwich. "The porch was failing 8 years ago. It has not improved. How's the north wall? Standing? Straight? No? The foundation? Optimistic." Mara pulled the chart from her jacket and showed him the list. Luis read it with the expression of a doctor examining a patient who had arrived carrying one of her own limbs. "You need to stabilize before you finish anything," he said. "I know." "No, you know the words. The building will tell you which order. What would it cost for you to look? Paige says I'm too expensive." Paige thinks throw pillows are structural. She did fire me over an invoice. In July, Paige had accused Luis of padding hours after he charged for rebuilding a set of rotten stairs, rather than covering them with composite boards. Daniel, already weak, had refused to intervene. Mara had watched Luis load his tools and said nothing because she still needed Paige to approve payroll. The memory sat between them. "I should have backed you," Mara said. Luis folded the chart along its existing crease. "Yes. No rescue. No gracious lie." "I'm sorry," he nodded once. "I can look tomorrow morning. I can't afford a full day." "Then don't ask for a full day. I'm not taking charity." "Good. I don't offer it." He handed the chart back. "You still know how to replace window glazing?" "Yes. My workshop has 12 sashes waiting, and only one of me." They agreed on 6 hours of her labor for his inspection and a written repair order. Mara understood exactly how favorable that bargain was. Luis understood she understood. Neither mentioned it. When the last pontoon was secured, Owen paid Mara in cash despite their arrangement. "We traded," she said. "We traded for use of the boat. That was work." She looked at the folded bills. At Vale Point, Daniel had often called extra hours part of being family. Mara put the money in her pocket. On the trip back to North Light, She carried her own groceries, her own second boot, and a borrowed ladder strapped across the red boat. The cabin appeared through the trees as it had the day before, gray, crooked, easy to dismiss. This time, when she pushed open the blue door, the latch held for one firm second before releasing. On the table lay Celeste's white envelope. Nathan had pretended to take it, then left it beneath the photograph. Mara opened it. Inside was the offer for North Light and a note in Celeste's hand. Daniel gave you a burden because guilt made him sentimental. I am trying to give you a choice. Mara read it twice. Then she turned the paper over and began writing Luis's repair order on the blank side. The ink from Luis's repair order bled through Celeste's note, turning the word choice into a dark blue smudge. Mara pinned the paper beneath a jar on the table and spent the remaining daylight clearing a path along the north wall. Fallen branches had collected against the siding, trapping wet leaves against the lower boards. She pulled away armfuls of black compost and uncovered 3 courses of cedar that were soft enough to dent with her thumb. When the light failed, she sat beneath the lantern with the green logbook and June's photograph. She tried to read the entries in order, but the voices kept colliding. Elise's restless plans, Daniel's square lists, Celeste calling guilt sentimental, Nathan saying Daniel always got worse when Mara tried to leave. At some point, she fell asleep with the book open beside her. A hammering sound woke her. Mara grabbed the cast iron skillet and reached the porch before realizing the hammering was Luis knocking on the blue door. He looked at the skillet. Breakfast? Security. Against what? Judgmental contractors. Luis stepped back. I can return with references. He had arrived in a flat-bottomed workboat loaded with a ladder, jacks, timber blocks, and enough tools to suggest that his definition of looking was flexible. A canvas bag hung from one hand. You said inspection, Mara said. I inspect better after coffee. The bag held a thermos and 2 egg sandwiches wrapped in foil. He placed them on the long table, then walked the building without speaking. Mara followed with her list. Luis pushed an awl into the porch beam, crawled beneath the north corner, sighted along the roof, and knocked on the stone chimney with the handle of a screwdriver. He took measurements and wrote them in a small notebook, held together with black tape. When he asked questions, he wanted exact answers. How long did the pump run rusty? First 15 strokes were mud. After that, pale brown. Smell? Iron? Maybe old pennies. Any oil sheen? No. Water near the foundation after rain? I've owned it 4 days. Then write down what happens after the next rain. He made a circle around 2 stones in the chimney mortar. No fire until this gets swept and scoped. I assumed. You brought a skillet to the door. I'm checking your assumptions. They ate on the porch steps. The morning was cold enough that steam rose from the coffee. Luis tore his sandwich in half before taking a bite, a habit Mara remembered from Vale Point job sites. Daniel used to make fun of him for it. What? Luis asked. Nothing. You looked at my sandwich like it owes you money. My father said only suspicious people divide food before eating it. Your father ate string cheese without pulling it into strings. He claimed it was more efficient. It was threatening. Mara smiled into her coffee. Luis studied the cabin. The good news is it wants to stay up. And the bad news? It needs convincing. He sketched the building on the back of his notebook. The north corner had settled because water from the roof ran directly toward it. The porch leaned independently and could wait if they removed weight from the outer edge. The split in the roof needed proper repair before snow. Several foundation stones had rolled, but the sill above them remained mostly sound. Mostly? Enough that I'm using words instead of condolences. Mara leaned closer to the drawing. Jack here, crib here, reset these stones, sister, this section. Luis glanced at her. You know the sequence. I did maintenance at the lodge. You replaced faucets at the lodge. I rebuilt Cottage 6's landing, after I laid it out, because Paige wanted it finished before the wedding party arrived. And you put one joy 16 inches off center. It was 15 7/8. That isn't the defense you think it is. She looked at his sketch again. Can I do it? With someone who knows when to stop. I know when to stop. You crossed the lake at dark in a leaking boat. That was transportation, not carpentry. Gravity doesn't care about categories. He walked her through the order twice, then made her explain it back. They cleared a level area, set temporary cribbing, and lifted the north corner less than half an inch, enough to ease pressure without cracking plaster or shifting the chimney. Luis made her keep her hands visible while he worked the jack. At Vale Point, Daniel had often handed Mara a tool after beginning a job, then taken it back the moment she hesitated. Luis did the opposite. He waited through her hesitation until she placed the block correctly herself. By noon, the corner was supported, and the blue front door no longer dragged against the floor. Mara opened and closed it twice. "Do that all day, and you'll loosen the hinges," Luis said. "You're incapable of letting a person enjoy a door. Door enjoyment is how callbacks happen." She paid him in the only currency he had agreed to accept, 6 hours glazing windows at his workshop. He wrote Thursday on the bottom of the repair list. "You still have your tools from the certification program?" he asked. "Some. Bring your glazing points. Mine are disappearing." "I deferred the program." "I know." Mara folded the paper. "Everybody knows a lot about me." "You filled out the application on my tailgate." She remembered the day. Lunch break at Cottage 10, Daniel in remission, Paige still living in Grand Rapids. Luis had held the form flat against the wind while Mara wrote. "I deferred twice," she said. "That's not the same as quitting. It is to the school. It's a trade association, not a jealous boyfriend. Call them." Mara tucked the repair order into the logbook. "I have a roof. You can own 2 problems." He packed the jack, but left the timber cribbing in place. When Mara objected, he said she could return the materials by helping him unload a shipment. "You build all your contracts around free labor? Only with people who accuse me of charity." His boat had just disappeared when Mara heard another motor from the lodge side. Celeste arrived alone in one of Vale Point's newer skiffs. She wore a cream windbreaker, leather gloves, and sunglasses too large for the gray day. The boat touched the broken dock once. She looked down at the gap between the hull and shore, as though insulted by the absence of a proper landing. Mara waded out in June's rubber boots and caught the line. "I told Nathan I'd come Monday." "You did. It's Monday." Mara had lost track. Celeste stepped into the shallow water with a sharp breath. "This dock is dangerous. It was included in my bequest." "I didn't come to fight. You brought the right shoes at least." Celeste climbed the slope. She stopped when she saw the cleared wall, the ladder, and the new cribbing beneath the corner. "You've hired someone." "I traded labor." "With Luis Ortega?" "Yes." Daniel dismissed him. Paige dismissed him. For billing irregularities. For refusing to hide rot under plastic boards. Celeste took off her sunglasses. Without them, the skin beneath her eyes looked bruised and loose. "You have always assumed the least charitable explanation of Paige. I watched the argument. You watched part of it. That must be genetic." Celeste's gaze went to Daniel's sweater. Mara waited for her to mention it. Instead, Celeste stepped inside. The cabin seemed to displease her personally. She looked at the repaired door, the lantern, June's photograph on the table. Her attention caught there. "Where did you get that?" "June." "She kept photographs?" "People do." Celeste crossed the room and picked up the frame. "Elise always made work look like a party." "Was it?" "No." The certainty in her voice made Mara look at her. Celeste set the photograph down. "People remember enthusiasm. They forget who paid the bills after enthusiasm moved on." "You mean Dad. I mean everyone who stayed. My mother didn't move on. You helped move her." The words were blunt enough that Mara expected Celeste to deny them. She did not. "Your parents' marriage was over before I became part of it," Celeste said. "Is that what Dad told you?" "It's what Elise told me." The room seemed to tilt by the same half-inch Luis had raised the foundation. "When?" "I'm not discussing that here." "You came here. I came to spare you another hotel bill." Mara laughed once. "By taking my house. By offering you options." Celeste opened her handbag and removed a folded legal pad page. "Your list. You're entitled to collect these things today. Paige will be present because several items you name may belong to the lodge. My hand tools belong to me. Then there should be no difficulty." They crossed back in separate boats. Vale Point looked unchanged from the water. The cedar cottages followed the curve of shore. Smoke rose from the main chimney, and the white letters on the boathouse remained freshly painted. Mara's body responded before her mind did. She noticed a loose fender on the west dock and an uncovered grill near Cottage 3. Her hands wanted to correct both. Celeste walked ahead without noticing either. Inside the lodge, the funeral flowers had been removed. The lobby smelled of furniture polish and the artificial apple scent Paige used in autumn. On the wall behind the registration desk hung Daniel's hand-painted map of the lake. Mara had passed it thousands of times. Now she saw the blank. Across the far shore, between Pike Point and a painted stand of spruce, the green surface dipped in a pale rectangular scar. Someone had scraped away paint, then covered the damage with trees that did not match Daniel's brushwork. North Light had not merely been omitted, it had been removed. Mara stepped closer. "You said you wanted your belongings," Paige called from the stairs. She wore narrow black pants and Daniel's lodge vest. A ring of master keys hung at her hip. "I'm looking at the map. It's not on your list. North Light used to be here." Paige came down the last step. "There are old ice houses missing too. Maps change. Dad told you to burn a photograph." Paige's expression shifted toward Nathan, though he was nowhere in sight. "He told me to clear obsolete files. Did you burn it?" "I don't remember. You remember every receipt Luis ever submitted. That was business." Mara touched the painted trees over the scar. "What was this?" Paige joined her at the map, but did not look at it. "Something Dad wanted left alone." "Why?" "Because your mother used it to make him feel guilty." "For what?" "For choosing a life that actually worked." The answer came too fast. Paige looked as if she wanted it back, but Mara had already heard the belief underneath it. Behind the registration desk, the telephone rang. Paige answered in her bright guest voice. "Vale Point Lodge, this is Paige." She listened, and the brightness thinned. "No, that can't be right. We confirmed delivery for Thursday." Mara watched Paige grip the receiver. "What do you mean Luis was handling it?" A cart loaded with stripped linen stood abandoned near the hall. The loose dock fender knocked rhythmically outside. Vale Point still looked beautiful. For the first time, Mara could hear things coming apart. Paige wrote something on the message pad with enough pressure to tear the paper. "We have a vendor agreement," she said into the phone. "I don't care who the representative was. Vale Point is the account." She listened, jaw tightening. "Yes, I understand Luis no longer works here. I'm the one who—" She stopped. "No, that isn't relevant." Celeste watched her from beside the fireplace. Mara could see the effort it took not to intervene while Paige was speaking. The call ended with Paige placing the receiver down very gently. "What delivery?" Celeste asked. "Propane. You confirmed it. I confirmed the date. With whom?" "Trent or Troy." Mara knew the name. Travis Galloway. Paige looked at her. "I have it handled." "Good." She started toward the back stairs. "Mara," Paige said. "Do you have Travis's direct number?" There it was, the old reflex dressed as a small request. Mara would produce a number, smooth a misunderstanding, explain which access road the driver needed after rain. Paige would remain the person in charge. "It's in the supplier file," Mara said. "I checked. Then Luis probably has it." "Luis isn't returning my calls. That's awkward," Celeste said. "This affects guests. There aren't guests until Friday." "How do you know?" "Because I manage reservations." Paige folded her arms. "Are you withholding business information? I'm standing here to collect my underwear." The night clerk, a 40-year-old man named Dale, passed through the lobby carrying a box of wine glasses. He heard enough to lower his eyes and increase his speed. Paige waited until he disappeared. "Travis told me his trucks can't use the East Service Road after heavy rain," Mara said. "The driver needs to come through Bellwether and use the old laundry turn. Tell him the yellow gate sticks, and somebody has to meet him because he won't back down that hill alone." Paige reached for the pad. "I'm telling you once," Mara said, "not because you asked me to work for free. Because Dale shouldn't have to move 12 space heaters around all weekend after you cut his help." Dale's footsteps paused somewhere beyond the dining room doors. Paige wrote the directions. "Thank you," Celeste said. It was the first honest-sounding thing she had said all day. Mara's room no longer looked like hers. The quilt had been removed, the dresser drawers stood open, and the mattress had been stripped to its white cover. Someone had placed a small vase of artificial lavender on the nightstand, preparing the room for a future guest before the previous occupant had collected her socks from beneath the bed. 2 plastic bins waited by the wall. Paige remained in the doorway with the list. Clothes, she read. Books, personal papers, carpentry tools. Mara opened the first bin. Her clothes had been folded this time. The second held loose photographs, notebooks from her certification courses, toiletries, and half a roll of wintergreen antacids. "Where are my tools?" "Maintenance shed." She went downstairs and across the courtyard, Paige following close enough that the master keys clicked at her hip. The maintenance shed had once been Daniel's favorite part of the property. He said the front desk sold promises and the shed kept them. Now labeled bins lined the walls and Page's preferred gray, and the workbench had been cleared of everything except a ceramic cup filled with matching pens. Mara's tool bag sat on the floor. She checked it. Tape measure, chisels, drill, bits, square, hand plane, glazing knife. The compact circular saw was missing. My saw. Purchased on the lodge account, Page said. Dad gave it to me for finishing the first certification unit. It stayed on lodge property. So did I. Apparently that didn't establish ownership. Page's face went pink. Take the saw. I don't want you claiming I stole it. I just told you to take it. Say it clearly. Mara, say the saw is mine. Page looked toward the open shed door. Celeste stood outside, hugging her coat closed against the wind. The saw is yours, Page said. Mara put it in the bag. Under the workbench, she found a wooden toolbox Daniel had used before rolling cases became fashionable. His initials were burned into the lid. She did not touch it. Page noticed. That stays? I know. The lack of argument seemed to unsettle her. Mara lifted her tool bag. The sweater is mine too. It belonged to Dad. So did the cabin. He left one of them deliberately. You don't know that. Mara met her eyes. Neither do you. In the courtyard, Dana Cole was loading bags of wet leaves into a utility trailer. She had worked housekeeping at Vale Point for 11 seasons and had recently begun taking maintenance shifts because Paige called it cross-training. Dana leaned on her rake when Mara approached. You living over there? Trying. Heard the roofs open. Temporarily closed. Heard the pump spits rust. News crosses the lake faster than I do. Dana smiled, then checked whether Paige could hear. June called me. Why? Said you might need help hauling out old mattresses. I can't pay anyone yet. I didn't ask yet. The words stayed between them. Paige stepped out of the shed. Dana, Cottage 4's gutters were on today's list. So were the leaves. Gutters first. We're expecting rain. Dana set the rake in the trailer. You cut Rob's shift, then manage your time. For one instant, Dana's face emptied of everything an employee could be punished for. Mara knew that expression. She had worn it through whole seasons. I'll call you about the mattresses, she said. Dana nodded and walked toward Cottage 4. Celeste helped Mara load the bins into her car. The transmission hesitated when Mara reversed, filling the courtyard with a hard metallic shudder. This is what I meant, Celeste said. The cabin, the car, your tuition. 20,000 is not an insult. It's not generosity either. It can be practical without being generous. Mara closed the trunk. Why do you want North Light? Celeste looked toward the main lodge. Through the lobby windows, Paige could be seen speaking into the telephone, one hand pressed to her forehead. Because Daniel should have ended what he started, Celeste said. That isn't an answer. It's the only one I have today. The rain began before Mara reached the marina. Owen helped cover the bins with a tarp and looked at the sky. You need to wait. I need to get the roof bucket under the leak. The roof bucket can swim. The notebook is there. Owen's expression sharpened. I left it in the cabin, Mara said. Then you'll learn whether Daniel's handwriting runs. She waited 40 minutes until the rain weakened, then crossed with Owen following. By the time she reached North Light, water was coming through the kitchen ceiling in a thin, steady line. The tarp held over the split, but runoff traveled beneath a lifted shingle. Mara set June's largest canning pot under the drip and climbed into the cramped loft with a flashlight. Wind pressed rain against the roof. She found the wet seam, marked it in pencil, and pushed a folded towel into the narrow channel until the storm passed. On the ground, runoff pooled along the north foundation, exactly where Luis had warned. Mara worked in rain gear until dark, digging a shallow diversion trench with Daniel's old camp shovel. Mud filled June's boots. Her hair stuck to her mouth. The trench was ugly and too narrow, but water began moving away from the cribbing. Inside, she checked the green logbook. Dry. She held it against her chest for one foolish second, then set it on the high pantry shelf. The bins from Vale Point filled the second sleeping room. Mara laid her course notebooks on the table to dry and found, tucked inside the first one, the original registration letter from the Great Lakes Residential Trades Association. Her practical modules were listed in blue ink, with Daniel's handwriting added across the bottom. Spring is a better time. Lodge will be stable by then. He had written that 2 springs ago. Mara took out her phone. No signal. She put on her raincoat again and climbed the wooded rise behind the cabin until one bar appeared. Rain ticked on the hood around her face. The association's voicemail asked her to leave a name, registration number, and reason for calling. "My name is Mara Vale," she said after the tone. "I deferred the residential carpentry certificate. Twice. I'm calling to find out if the work I completed still counts." She nearly ended there. "And what it would take to finish." The next morning, she reported to Luis's workshop with her glazing points as promised. His building was an old feed store near Bellwether, with tall front windows and a freight door scarred by decades of deliveries. 12 strip sashes leaned against a bench. Luis had arranged putty, glazing points, and clean rags at 2 workstations. "Your roof survive?" he asked. "Mostly." "Foundation?" "I cut a drainage trench." "How deep?" 8 inches. "How wide?" "Don't ruin this for me." He nodded toward the second station. "Show me." Mara bedded the first pane, set the points, and ran a line of putty. Her first corner was clumsy. The second was clean. Luis watched without reaching for the knife. "You've practiced," he said. "I had 62 lodge windows. You complained through all of them. I practiced verbally, too." They worked in easy stretches of silence. Rain moved softly over the shop roof. A radio played old country music from a shelf near the clamps. After the 4th sash, Mara's phone rang. She wiped her hands and answered. A woman from the Trades Association told her the completed modules still counted, but her enrollment had expired. She could re-enter for the winter practical if she passed a skills assessment and paid the reinstatement fee by the end of the month. "How much?" the woman told her. Mara looked at the cash from Owen in her wallet, then at the 12 windows, the damaged cabin, and her car parked outside like a mechanical threat. "Can I call you back?" she asked. She wrote the deadline on a scrap of sandpaper. Luis did not ask the amount. At lunch, he handed her half a sandwich and said, "I have a built-in job starting next month. Cabinets, 2 stair rails, window trim. I need someone who measures 15 7/8 when she means 16. That sounds unsafe. It pays. Why? Because labor often does." Mara folded the sandpaper and put it in her pocket. When she returned to North Light that evening, a second boat was tied beside the red 14-footer. June stood in the kitchen wearing her lemon apron over a heavy coat. Dana was dragging the ruined mattress toward the door. Owen had removed the pump handle and spread its parts across the table. Mara stopped in the doorway. "What is happening?" June looked up from a cupboard she was scrubbing. "You returned the jars empty," she said. "We're correcting your attitude." Mara looked from June to the open door. "How did you get in?" "The door doesn't lock," June said. "It latches. Congratulations." Dana backed through the doorway, hauling the mattress by one stained handle. "Can the reunion wait until I get this thing off my foot?" Mara dropped her tool bag and grabbed the other end. Together, they dragged the mattress across the porch and down the slope, where a sheet of heavy plastic waited beside Owen's boat. "Where are we taking it?" Mara asked. "Transfer station," Dana said. "Owen says it won't fit in his wood stove." "I said it would fit once," Owen called from the kitchen. "I said the smoke would get us arrested." June leaned out the door. "Stop shouting private family history. We're not family. Then stop acting like it." Mara returned to the kitchen. Owen had removed a cracked leather cup from the pump mechanism and was cutting a replacement from thick brown stock. June's cleaning had already revealed the color of the pantry shelves. A bucket of gray water stood beside her. "You can't just arrive and renovate someone's house," Mara said. "Of course we can," June replied. "You inherited it from people who did exactly that. I mean, without asking." June rested both hands on the broom handle. "Would you have said yes?" Mara looked at the mattress being wrapped for transport. "No. That's why. That isn't acceptable." "No," June said. "It's useful. Different category." Owen kept his head bent over the pump part, wisely pretending not to exist. Mara removed Daniel's sweater and hung it on the back of a chair. "I'm not taking charity." Dana came in, rubbing her lower back. "Good, because I charge $22 an hour for mattress wrestling. I told you I can't pay. Then you owe me 4 hours on my bathroom floor." Mara blinked. "Your bathroom floor? Soft by the toilet? I've been putting a towel over it for 6 months. That's not a repair. It hides the color." June pointed to the stripped pantry. "You owe me 6 quarts of tomato soup once we have a safe stove." "Owen," he fitted the leather cup onto the pump rod. "Help me rebuild the rack over slip 8. You already got pontoon labor. That was the boat. This is the pump. Mara looked around at the three of them. Did you discuss this before coming? No, they said together. June turned away first. Mara picked up a scrub brush. What needs doing? The room changed once she joined it. Not visually, not at first. There was too much damage for one afternoon to produce beauty. But work gave the cabin a language it remembered. Dana stripped the iron bedstead and carried its rusted pieces outside. Owen reassembled the pump. June assigned Mara to the lower pantry shelves, then criticized her water-to-vinegar ratio until Mara handed her the bottle. At the back of a wide drawer, beneath brittle shelf paper patterned with strawberries, Mara found a thin black notebook stuck to the wood. She worked a putty knife beneath it, the cover lifted with a damp sucking sound. Several pages had fused at the edges, but the center remained readable. The same slanted handwriting filled most of it. June stopped scrubbing. Owen said there were two, Mara said. That's the kitchen book, June replied. You knew it was here? I knew it used to be. Mara opened to the first intact page. It held quantities rather than prose. Onion soup, 18. Bean stew, 24 if Cal doesn't eat before serving. Tomato, everyone claims 2 bowls, make 3. A note in June's handwriting filled the margin. Elise counts appetite as mathematics. It is not. Mara handed the notebook to her. June ran a thumb beneath the note but did not smile. The last time I saw this, Daniel was shouting, she said. What about? He wanted receipts. Elise had receipts in 4 coat pockets, 2 drawers, and probably the woods. Were they losing money? We were never making much. That isn't what I asked. June closed the notebook halfway. The winter program paid wages and covered food most months. Some weeks the lodge carried it. Other weeks Northlight repaired enough furniture or equipment to cover itself. Daniel wanted a business unit. Elise wanted a place people could land. Neither knew how to speak the other's language without insulting it. What did you want? A paycheck and a stove that lit on the first match. Dana lowered herself onto the window seat. What kind of repairs? Chairs, lamps, shutters, canoes. Whatever Vale Point would otherwise send out or replace. June handed the book back to Mara. Your mother believed people would pay to learn, eventually. Weekend workshops, she called them. Daniel said guests did not come to a lodge to work. Most guests don't, Mara said. Most guests don't come in November either. The thought settled quietly. Not an answer, not yet. Just a door that had opened half an inch. Dana pointed toward Mara's glazing knife. I'd pay to learn windows. I have 6 at my place painted shut since the first Bush administration. Which one? The older one. I'm not exaggerating. You should not start on 6 windows. Then I'd pay to be told that officially. June returned the kitchen book to Mara. First, water. Owen worked the pump handle. Air moved through the pipe with a hollow groan. He pumped again. Brown water spat into the sink, then stopped. Part won't last, he said. You said that 40 years ago, June replied. It didn't. It lasted longer than your first marriage. So did my mustache. He poured a cup of water and held it to the window. Sediment drifted in the bottom. Keep pumping, Mara said. They took turns. The water lightened from brown to amber, then to something nearly clear. Owen filled 3 jars, labeled them by time, and told Mara to take the final one for testing before she drank any. Dana watched the last jar settle. We did all that work and it can still poison us? That is the history of plumbing, Owen said. Rain returned in the afternoon, gentler than the previous storm. Mara walked the north wall with Luis's instructions in mind. Water entered her trench, hesitated at one low point, then moved away from the cribbing. She stood in the rain, watching it drain. Dana joined her under the eave. You look pleased with mud. It's moving in the correct direction. You do have Daniel's romance. Mara glanced at her. Dana tucked her hands into her jacket pockets. He loved systems. He just hated when the system needed people. That sounds like June. It's mine. Inside, Dana's phone began to ring. She looked at the screen through the window and did not move. Paige, Mara asked. 3rd time. Aren't you off today? Paige doesn't believe days off apply if she finds something. The call stopped. A message arrived. Dana read it, jaw tightening. She wants me to cover dinner setup. Rob's back went out cleaning the gutters. The gutters she assigned after you had already worked a full list. Yes, you could say no. Dana laughed without humor. That advice travels easier across the lake. Mara understood. Dana still needed the job. A bad floor hidden by a towel usually meant there was no safe reserve in the bank. I didn't mean, I know, Dana typed a reply. I told her I've been drinking. You haven't. She won't ask me to handle glassware. Mara stared. Dana put the phone away. What? I'm unavailable responsibly. June insisted on cooking before anyone left. The camp stove was too small for her preferred pot, so she used 2 saucepans and complained about modern decline while heating tomato soup brought from her freezer. Mara sliced bread. Owen repaired the loose rung of a chair without being asked, then wrote 1/2 hour beside his name on Mara's repair list. You're billing me for unsolicited chair work? I would have fallen. That sounds personal. Put it toward the boat rack. Mara added a 1/2 hour under Owen's column. She made columns for everyone. Dana, mattress, cleaning, hauling. June, pantry, kitchen, food. Luis, inspection, materials, stabilization. Beside her own name, Mara listed marina, bathroom floor, soup, windows, rack, shop glazing. The obligations exceeded the work completed. Strangely, that made her feel less trapped. At the lodge, debts had been fog. Daniel gave her a room, so she stayed late. Celeste paid utilities, so Mara did not complain when her day off vanished. Paige called it family when she wanted the ledger erased. Here, everyone wrote down what the work cost. They ate at the long table while rain struck the tarp overhead. June's soup was sharper than Mara remembered from lodge dinners, heavy with pepper and roasted garlic. Dana had 3 bowls after claiming she wanted one. Owen took the last piece of bread and denied it while chewing. For 10 minutes, no one spoke about Daniel, Elise, Celeste, or the cabin's history. June described a disastrous church rummage sale involving a reclining chair that would not stop vibrating. Dana imitated Paige's instructions for folding fitted sheets. Owen laughed so hard at the impression that soup went down wrong, and everyone had to wait while he recovered his dignity. Mara looked at the table from the same angle as the adults in June's photograph. The resemblance hurt. Not because this was the family she should have had. That was too easy, and she knew almost nothing about what those winters had been like. It hurt because the room was proving her father had not erased an idea. He had erased people at a table. When the weather cleared, they loaded the mattress and trash into Owen's boat. Dana wrote her address beside the 4 hours Mara owed her. Don't wear the good boots, she said. The toilet leaks creatively. June left the black kitchen book beside the green maintenance log. Keep them apart until both are dry, she instructed. And don't flatten the pages with jars. You flattened everything with jars. I had better jars. After their motors faded, North Light felt bigger than it had before they came. Mara washed the soup bowls with water from the drinking containers and set them on a towel. She carried the frame photograph to the wall, held it in 3 different places, then returned it to the table. Hanging it felt too much like declaring something she had not earned. Her phone caught a weak signal near the porch. There was a voicemail from Paige. Mara, Dana says she was helping you today. You need to understand that Vale Point employees cannot use lodge time or equipment on private projects. You are creating confusion, and I won't allow North Light to interfere with operations. Mara listened twice. Then she called back. Paige answered immediately. Finally. Dana was off the clock. She used her own gloves in Owen's boat. That isn't the point. What is? You're encouraging staff to choose sides. I asked no one to come, but they came. Paige sounded frightened rather than angry. Mara heard it only because she knew her so well. The lodge is yours, Mara said. You won. This isn't a game. No, games have rules everyone knows. I'm asking you to keep your project separate from our business. Then stop calling me for supplier numbers, Paige inhaled. Mara softened before she meant to. Did the propane get scheduled? A pause. Thursday. Good. Mara, she ended the call. On the table, Celeste's offer remained beneath the jar, its back covered in roofing measurements. Mara looked at the 2 notebooks beside it, then at the columns of work owed to people who had arrived without being summoned. She turned the offer over and wrote 1 more line beneath Luis's repair order. North Light winter work. Ask what people would actually pay to learn. The sentence looked dangerously like one of Elise's. Mara left it there anyway. The bathroom floor at Dana's house did not merely feel soft. It moved. Mara stood beside the toilet with 1 boot on the vinyl and shifted her weight. The floor answered with a wet creak. Dana leaned in the doorway holding 2 mugs of coffee. See? The towel makes it less alarming. The towel makes it harder to see water. Emotionally less alarming. Mara shut off the supply valve and removed the access panel behind the toilet. The slow leak had darkened the subfloor but not destroyed the joists. She pressed the tip of her screwdriver into the wood and felt resistance. "You're lucky," she said. "I'm poor. It occasionally resembles luck because I wait so long." Mara looked back at her. Dana handed her a mug. That wasn't a request for pity. "I know." "Good." They pulled up the vinyl and cut away the damaged section. Dana worked carefully but without confidence, repeating each measurement aloud before using Mara's circular saw. When the blade started, she jumped. "That thing sounds expensive," she said. "It was a gift." "From Daniel?" "Yes." Dana guided the saw along the line. "Then he gave you a tool and kept you where he could use it." Mara steadied the board. "People keep saying things about my father while I'm holding sharp objects. Lake tradition." The repair took longer than the 4 hours Dana had banked at North Light. They found the toilet flange cracked, drove to the hardware store for a replacement, and came back with sandwiches because Dana had forgotten lunch. At the kitchen table, Dana emptied change from a jar to reimburse Mara for the part. "Keep it," Mara said. Dana looked up. "Put the amount on the list. I'll owe you less. That sounds dangerously sensible." "I'm experimenting." Dana wrote the figure on the back of an electric bill. "Page cut me to 3 days next month." Mara stopped eating. "She said winter occupancy doesn't support full housekeeping," Dana continued. "But she still wants me available for events and maintenance. Available unpaid, available flexibly. That's the phrase. You've worked there 11 years, 12 in February if I make it." Did she cut Dale too? Dale, Rob, half the kitchen. She's bringing in a contract crew for turnover days. Mara pictured strangers searching for shut-off valves, storage keys, and the latch on Cottage 8 that had to be lifted before it would close. None of that knowledge appeared in Paige's gray bins. Celeste knows? Celeste knows the labor line is lower. Dana folded the bill and slid it beneath the jar. "Don't make that face." "What face?" "The one where you start solving something no one hired you to solve." Mara took another bite of sandwich. Dana smiled. "That's better." Luis's built-in job occupied the next 4 days. The house belonged to a retired physician who wanted white oak cabinets fitted into a kitchen where no wall met another at 90 degrees. Luis made Mara scribe the first filler strip twice. "The gap is a 16th, she said. "The gap is visible. Only if someone puts their face against the refrigerator." People become passionate inspectors when they receive invoices. By the second day, he let her fit the window trim alone. By the third, he stopped checking every cut. The trust made Mara slower, then better. They ate lunch on overturned buckets in the garage. Luis brought half sandwiches. Mara had begun bringing 2 whole ones and dividing them before he could. "You're becoming suspicious," he said. "I'm learning portion control." He opened a thermos of soup June had sent. "You call the association," I called. "That wasn't my question. The reinstatement fee is due Friday. And the cabin needs glass, chimney work, roof materials, water testing, fuel, and a dock that doesn't attempt murder." Luis tore bread into the soup. "Which one stops you from paying the fee?" "Money. You're earning money, which then becomes less money." "Accurate." Mara waited for advice. He kept eating. "You're irritating," she said. "I'm having lunch. Most people would tell me to invest in myself. Most people don't have your roof." She looked at him. "What would you do?" "Pay the fee." "Why?" "Because roofs are always hungry. If you feed every building before yourself, you'll die uncertified under excellent shingles." She laughed, then became serious again. Luis wiped his spoon. "Daniel once asked me whether the program would make you expect journeyman wages." Mara's appetite disappeared. "When?" "The year you applied." "What did you say?" "That certification usually makes people expect certification wages." "And he?" "Said it might be better for you to learn on the job." The garage filled with the small, ticking sounds of cooling tools. "He told me the certificate mattered," Mara said. Maybe part of him believed that. He filled out the recommendation. Maybe part of him wanted credit for believing it. Luis did not sound cruel. That was what made the sentence enter cleanly. Mara stared at the cabinets she had helped fit. Daniel had encouraged her in gestures and obstructed her in calendars. He bought the saw, praised the work, and found a reason each spring could not belong to her. Why didn't you tell me? You worked for him. You lived in his house. I was already arguing with him about labor rates. Louise set the thermos aside. I didn't know what telling you would cost. It cost me anyway. Yes. She wanted him to apologize for that, then realized she did not know what apology could repair. That afternoon, Mara cut every joint correctly. On Friday, she paid the reinstatement fee. The confirmation email arrived while she stood at the marina, waiting for Owen to finish fueling the red boat. Her account balance dropped below what she had set aside for replacement windows. She read the receipt twice and felt no triumph, only nausea and a quiet sense that a door had closed behind her. Owen peered at the phone. Bad news? I enrolled. Terrible. I spent the window money. Windows are overrated. Walls with opinions. Mara put away the phone. I need plastic sheeting. I have a roll. I'll add it to the rack. At this point, you're building the rack alone. Northlight's roof repair began Saturday morning. Louise brought cedar shingles and roof felt left from a previous job, charging Mara only for the portion she used. Owen supplied staging planks. June supplied chili and supervision. Dana arrived after her shift with a box of screws she claimed had been abandoned in her garage by a former boyfriend who deserved no reimbursement. Nathan arrived last. He tied a Vale Point skiff beside Owen's boat and climbed the slope carrying 2 bundles of new shingles. Everyone stopped working. Mara came down the ladder. Where did those come from? I bought them. With lodge money? With mine. There's a receipt. I didn't ask you to. You said that went badly last time. June stirred chili over the camp stove. Put him on debris. Nathan looked at her. Hello, June. Your wrists improve? Marginally. Mara took the shingles. This doesn't fix the porch. I know. Or the funeral. I know. Or the suitcase. Nathan looked at the blue door. I know. She wanted more resistance. His agreement left her holding all the anger alone. You can strip the damaged rows, she said. Louise checks before you pull anything structural. I manage a lodge. That wasn't the qualification. Nathan climbed the ladder without another word. They worked from the damaged section outward. Louise exposed the split sheathing, cut back to sound wood, and showed Mara how the load traveled around the opening. She fitted the patch. Nathan carried debris. Dana sorted reusable shingles. Owen repaired porch boards because he distrusted idle hands, including his own. By late afternoon, the roofline had changed almost invisibly. That pleased Mara. Good repairs did not announce themselves. They removed the reason anyone had been looking. Nathan stood beside her on the staging, while Louise checked the final course. Paige called, he said. What did you tell her? That I was here. Mara looked at him. She said I was encouraging you. Are you? I don't know. She gave him a warning look. Nathan corrected himself. I'm trying to stop using that answer. Progress. She thinks Northlight is becoming a rival. To a 30-room lodge, she thinks people are making a statement by helping. People are fixing a roof. In this family, that may qualify. Louise tapped the shingle beneath Nathan's hand. If the statement is finished, I need that space. They climbed down. June served chili in mismatched bowls. The room now had a clean table, usable chairs, one safe bed, patched windows, and a pump producing clear-looking water that Mara still did not drink. A roll of plastic covered the worst empty frame. The changes remained modest, but the cabin no longer appeared to be waiting for weather to finish it. Dana showed Mara a list written on the back of a grocery receipt. What is this? People who asked about the window thing. 6 names. Beside them, Dana had written, Saturday, price, bring own sash. I haven't planned a workshop. You wrote that we should ask what people would pay to learn. How did you see that? It was under the soup pot. June looked pleased with herself. Mara read the names again. We don't have heat. The water test isn't back. Half the electrical system is from the age of optimistic fire insurance. So, don't do it here, Louise said. Use my shop. She looked at him. You help me prep. They pay a small fee. We split it after materials. That's your business. It could be both. Nathan glanced around the table. Vale Point has an empty conference room. No, Mara and June said together. He raised both hands. Learning? Owen switched on the weather radio he had brought. The forecast voice mentioned a pressure drop, gale force gusts, and a fast-moving storm expected to cross the upper lake late Monday. Luis stopped eating. That track changes, we'll get it straight from the west, he said. Mara thought of North Light's repaired roof and felt the new shingles above her like a held breath. Owen turned up the volume. The forecast repeated the expected wind speed. Nathan set down his bowl. Vale Point still has 6 docks in. Everyone at the table looked toward him. Mara knew those docks. She knew the western anchoring cables had been scheduled for replacement in August and postponed when Paige rejected Luis's invoice. "Who's handling storm prep?" she asked. Nathan did not answer quickly enough. Across the table, June closed her eyes. Mara was already reaching for her coat. "Wait," Nathan said. Mara had one arm in her coat. "What?" "The docks are Paige's responsibility. The docks are tied to the property. The wind won't check the org chart." Luis stood. "What anchors are on the west line?" "Old screw piles," Mara said. "The outer cable was fraying in July." "I replaced that cable," Nathan said. "No. Paige moved it to winter maintenance. She told me it was done. She told me she approved it. That isn't the same thing." Nathan took out his phone and walked toward the porch for a signal. Owen folded the weather radio's antenna. "We have 2 days if the track holds." "If it holds," Luis said. Mara looked around North Light. The new roof needed time before wind tested every edge. Tools lay beneath the porch. The collapsed dock had loose boards that could become weapons. One shutter still lacked a lower hinge. She had spent years leaving her own work unfinished to solve Vale Point's problems. "We secure this place first," she said. Nathan turned from the porch. "Paige says she has a contractor coming Monday morning. For 6 docks? She says they're bringing a crew." "Who?" "Harbor Seasonal." Owen made a sound low in his throat. Mara knew the company. They stacked furniture, wrapped boats, and hired whoever answered an online posting. They did not know which Vale Point cleats pulled loose or where the underwater cables crossed. "Tell Paige they need to start tomorrow," Mara said. "She won't pay the Sunday rate. Then tell her to use the money she saved on Luis." Nathan typed. Mara faced the others. North Light first. Nobody argued. They stripped the job site before dusk. Luis screwed temporary battens over the repair, then showed Mara which ones to remove after the shingles settled. Nathan hauled the roof debris to Owen's boat. Dana and June cleared the porch and moved the loose furniture inside. Owen cut apart the most dangerous section of dock, towing 2 rotten panels above the high water line. The work was not free. Mara added hours beside every name, including Nathan's. "What do I get?" he asked. "What do you want?" He looked surprised by the question. "I don't know." Mara pointed at the list. "You have until I finish my roof," he thought while carrying a stack of boards. "Help with the lodge inventory system?" "No, I'm joking. You need practice." In the end, Nathan asked her to help repair a dining chair Daniel had broken during his final winter. He had kept it in storage because throwing it away felt wrong and fixing it felt beyond him. Mara wrote chair. Everyone left before dark except Luis, who stayed to secure the shutters. They worked on opposite sides of the cabin, calling measurements through the open windows. "Up an eighth," he said. "My eighth or your judgmental eighth? The one on the tape." She raised the hinge. When the final shutter closed properly, the room darkened. Luis opened it again. "You're not staying here during the storm." "Yes, I am." "The shore takes the west wind. So does every building on this side. This building is held up by blocks we placed last week. Good blocks." "Mara, I need to see where water moves. I need to know what fails. You can inspect failure afterward. That was my father's approach." Luis set down the drill. "Not every disagreement is Daniel." She took a breath. "No," she said, "it isn't." He waited. "I'll stay at Owens if the forecast goes above 60, 50, 55. He considered. "With a gust clause." "What is a gust clause?" "If Owen says leave, you leave." Owen thinks weather is a personality test. Owen has been on this lake longer than both of us. Mara held out her hand. 55. Luis shook it. His palm was warm and rough, and neither of them released quickly enough for the agreement to feel entirely meteorological. "Call the marina every check-in," he said. "I will." His boat crossed through the evening light. Mara watched until it reached the far shore. The forecast worsened overnight. By morning, sustained winds were predicted near 50, with gusts above 65. Mara packed the notebooks, the frame photograph, her course materials, and Daniel's sweater into a waterproof bin. She moved the bed away from the chimney, braced the blue door, and checked the roof from the ground. Owen arrived before she called. "You lose the bet," he said. "I don't remember betting." Luis explained the contract in insulting detail. They towed the red boat behind Owen's larger one. Mara left North Light with the shutters closed, the porch cleared, and one jar on the table to show whether the roof leaked. The cabin disappeared between the trees as they crossed. Vale Point's docks were still in the water. 2 temporary workers were carrying lounge chairs into the boathouse one at a time. The harbor seasonal truck had not arrived. Paige stood near the fuel dock holding a clipboard, while Dana dragged tarps over stacked furniture. Mara stepped out of Owen's boat. "Where's the crew?" "Delayed at another property," Paige said. "They'll be here by noon. The wind starts rising at 2. I have the forecast." "Then why are 2 people carrying chairs?" "They're working as quickly as possible." One of the temporary men attempted to stack a wet chair on top of 6 dry ones. The pile slid sideways. Mara caught it before it fell. Paige lowered the clipboard. "I didn't ask you to come. I came because my cabin is secured." "Well, this is handled." The westernmost dock lifted on a passing swell. Its outer corner rose several inches later than the shore end, a sign the anchoring cable was slack. Mara pointed. "That cable won't hold. The contractor will assess it. The contractor isn't here." Celeste walked down from the lodge carrying a tray of paper coffee cups. She wore rubber boots and an old Vale Point rain jacket that had belonged to Daniel. For once, she looked less like the owner than someone expecting to work. "Nathan says we should pull the west dock first," she said. Paige's face tightened. "Nathan has been influenced? By weather? By Mara." Mara picked up a socket wrench from the tool cart. "I can give you 4 hours," she said. "After that, I'm helping Owen secure the marina." Paige stared at the wrench. Are you charging us?" "Yes. You lived here without rent, and now I don't." Celeste handed Mara a coffee. "Write the hours down." Paige looked at her mother. Celeste met her eyes. "We do not have time for pride." It was not an apology. Mara accepted the coffee anyway. They worked until the contractor finally arrived at 1:30, with 3 people and a winch too light for the outer dock. Mara and Owen had already disconnected the fuel lines, removed the rental skiffs, and hauled 2 dock sections onto shore. Nathan joined them after canceling the Monday wine tasting. "You canceled it?" Paige demanded. "The distributor canceled first. You could have rescheduled." "For the storm?" "For December." Nathan pulled on work gloves. "We can discuss fermented priorities later." The first hard gust struck before 3. It drove ripples across the protected cove and tore Paige's clipboard papers from beneath a fuel receipt. Everyone watched the pages scatter toward the woods. "Inside," Owen said. "Now." The outer dock remained in the water. They had disconnected it from the main walkway, but failed to lift it before the wind made the job unsafe. Its old screw pile anchors would have to hold. Mara spent the night at Owen's house above the marina. Rain slammed the windows hard enough to shake the glass. The power failed at 8:13. Owen lit oil lamps and set the marine radio on his kitchen table. Luis called before the cell towers became unreliable. "You at Owen's?" "Yes." "Not on a roof?" "Not currently. My shop lost part of the gutter." "I'm sorry." It hated the building. "Did you bring the sashes in?" "All 12. "Then they're emotionally safe." The line crackled. "Mara," he said, "I'm here." "Good." The call dropped before either of them found a less dangerous word. At 9, a tree fell somewhere behind Owen's house with a sound like a door being kicked in. At 10:30, the marina's outer light vanished. Owen listened to the radio, writing wind readings on the back of an envelope. Near midnight, Nathan called. His voice was difficult to hear over the storm. "The west dock broke loose," he said. "Did it hit anything?" "Boathouse corner. We have water coming under the lower doors. Move the electrical equipment off the floor and stay out of the boathouse." We did. "Cottage 5 lost a tree." "Occupied?" "No." "We moved everyone into the main lodge." "Good." Nathan hesitated. Paige didn't want to. Mara did not ask why. Refunds, appearances, admitting risk, Paige's reasons could wait until daylight. "Where's Celeste?" "Kitchen. She's making coffee on the gas range. Then keep everyone inside." After the call, Owen looked at Mara across the oil lamp. "You were managing," he said. "I answered questions." You answered before he finished asking. Mara pulled June's blanket tighter around her shoulders. Habit. The storm moved east before dawn. In the sudden quiet, water continued dripping from the eaves with exaggerated patience. Owen and Mara walked down to the marina at first light. Two boats had torn their covers. A section of his fuel dock leaned at an angle. The rack over slip 8, the one Mara owed him labor on, had lost its roof. Debt's getting larger, Owen said. I noticed. They checked the buildings, shut off a damaged line, and dragged branches from the launch. Luis arrived with a chainsaw and coffee. Dana came an hour later carrying breakfast from June. Nobody had called a meeting. They simply began. Mara waited until the lake settled before crossing to North Light with Luis and Owen. The cabin stood. The new roof had held, though a branch had punched through the porch railing and crushed two boards. One shutter hung from its upper hinge. The shortened dock had shifted, and one remaining post leaned into the water. Inside, the jar on the table was dry. Mara put her hand on the glass. Luis came to stand beside her. Enjoying a jar? Don't ruin this. I wouldn't dare. A faint damp patch marked the pantry ceiling, but the notebooks in their waterproof bin were safe. The north foundation remained on its cribbing. Mara walked around the cabin twice, making a list. Her phone rang as the signal returned. Paige, Mara answered. Is everyone safe? Yes, Paige said. But the lodge is a disaster. The west docks hit the boathouse, Cottage 5 is blocked, and we have 10 guests who need to get to town. The service road is covered by trees. Keep them in the main lodge until the county clears it. They have flights. Their flights are probably canceled. They're insisting. Mara looked at Luis and Owen. Both had heard enough to understand. Paige continued. Nathan says you have boats and people over there. We have damaged property. Vale Point is your family's livelihood, not mine. A sharp breath came through the phone. Fine. Whatever this is between us can wait. I need your crew. Mara looked at North Light's broken railing, then toward the far shore where Vale Point's white boathouse stood above the damaged docks. Not for the lodge, she said. For the guests. What does that mean? It means we'll get the people out. And then, Mara picked up her work gloves. Then, you handle what you own. Paige began speaking before Mara could end the call. The boathouse is still accessible from the lawn. You'll need to come around the south marker because there's debris near the fuel dock. I know the approach. Of course. I just meant, have the guests ready in life jackets. 1 bag each. Keep them inside until we tie up. They're already packed. Are they wearing life jackets? A pause. I'll tell Nathan. Tell him we need the names of everyone boarding each boat. No one steps onto a damaged dock until Owen says, They're adults, Mara. Adults panic too. She ended the call and looked at Owen. Can your launch carry 6 safely? 5 with luggage. Luis's boat takes 3. The red boat takes 2 if we keep the weight forward. Luis shook his head. You're not using the red boat in debris. It made it through worse. It leaks in calm water. Owen pointed toward North Light's shore. My second workboat is tied behind the point. 4 people, if the fuel line survived. They found it filled with leaves, but undamaged. Mara checked the line, drained water from the bilge, and ran the motor while Owen cut fallen branches away from the path. Luis covered the broken porch railing with bright tape so no one forgot it during the rush. Within an hour, 3 boats crossed toward Vale Point. The storm had changed the shoreline. Branches floated where the channel had been clear. A section of Paige's west dock rested upside down against the boathouse, its metal ladder pointing toward the sky. Cedar shingles littered the water like playing cards. Owen approached first and stood off until he saw the main dock pilings hold under a small wave. He brought his launch alongside. Luis tied behind him. Mara came last in the workboat, keeping the bow away from a half-submerged bench. Nathan waited on shore wearing waders and Daniel's old orange life vest. He had organized 10 guests beneath the covered walkway, each with a small bag. 9 wore life jackets. 1 man in a quilted vest carried his over his arm. You need to put that on, Mara said. I've been boating for 30 years. Then you know how. He looked at Paige. Paige wore a Vale Point raincoat and held a guest list. Mr. Weller is uncomfortable with the fit. Mara tied the stern line. Mr. Weller can be uncomfortable on shore or uncomfortable in the boat. The man stared at her. Are you the owner of a different damaged dock? Owen coughed into his hand. Mr. Weller put on the life jacket. Celeste emerged from the lodge carrying 2 cardboard trays of coffee. Her hair was pulled back badly, and a dark stain marked the front of Daniel's raincoat. "Gas range boiled over," she said when she saw Mara looking. "I remain uninjured." She gave the coffee to the guests, apologized for the conditions, and took complaints without flinching. Mara watched her listen to one woman describe a sleepless night as if Celeste had personally arranged the wind. Paige approached with the list. "I've divided them by departure schedule. We're taking everyone to Pike's Marina. Some need to get to the airport first. They can arrange cars from the marina. The road crew hasn't cleared Bellwether Highway yet. Mr. Weller has a noon flight," Mr. Weller said. 1:45. Mara looked at him. "You don't have a 1:45 flight. How would you know?" "The airport closed during the storm." He checked his phone and became quiet. Mara took Paige's list. "We divide by boat capacity." For the next 40 minutes, practical tasks overruled the family. Nathan checked names. Celeste held bags while people boarded. Dana brought towels from the lodge and wrapped them around wet seats. Paige kept trying to improve the process and eventually made herself useful by writing each boat's passengers on separate cards. The crossing was slow but calm. The guests were frightened enough to follow instructions. Mr. Weller sat in Mara's boat, gripping the bench with both hands. Halfway across, he said, "This isn't how I pictured the weekend. Neither did the lake. My wife wanted the spa. Vale Point doesn't have a spa. That's what I told her." His laugh came out thin. It was the first human sound he had made. At Pike's Marina, June had set up coffee and soup in the repair bay. No one had asked her. Stu from the motel arrived with his shuttle van and began organizing rides into town once the highway opened. Owen's damaged fuel dock remained tilted in the background, but he made sure every guest reached solid ground before inspecting it again. Mara crossed back for the final group. Only staff remained at Vale Point when she returned. Dana sat on a porch step with a towel around her shoulders. Paige stood over her. "We need the lower room stripped before the damp sets in," Paige said. "I've been working since 5 yesterday morning," Dana replied. "Everyone has. I'm going home. If you leave now, don't expect me to protect your winter schedule." Dana looked up slowly. "What winter schedule?" Paige's mouth opened. Mara stepped off the dock. Dana stood. 3 days became 2 on the sheet in the laundry room. "We're still adjusting occupancy. You said 3. I said approximately 3. Then I approximately quit." Celeste turned from the boathouse. Paige laughed once as if Dana had made an inappropriate joke. "You're exhausted. Go rest. We'll discuss this tomorrow." "No." Dana handed Paige her lodge keys. "You discuss. I'm going to sleep." She walked toward Mara's boat. Paige looked at Mara. "Did you offer her a job?" "No." "Are you going to?" "I don't have a job to offer." Dana climbed aboard and sat on the forward bench. "She owes me a bathroom floor." "Half a bathroom floor," Mara said. "See? Exploitative." Louise smiled down at the dock. Paige's face hardened. "You're enjoying this." Mara looked at the overturned dock, the torn boathouse siding, and Celeste standing in Daniel's stained raincoat. "No," she said, "I'm really not." After the guests were gone, Celeste gathered Mara, Louise, and Owen near the lodge kitchen. Nathan stood beside the back door. Paige remained by the telephone, calling contractors who were already booked across the county. "We need the dock sections hauled clear before another wind," Celeste said. "The boathouse doors have to come off, and Cottage 5 needs the tree removed. We will pay." Owen looked at Mara. It was a small gesture, but Paige saw it. "So she speaks for all of you now?" Paige asked. "No," Mara said. "They came because I asked for help moving people. You're asking about repair work." "Yes." "Then ask each person." Celeste turned to Louise. "Can you take the cottage? I have a standing job. We'll pay your emergency rate." "I offered Vale Point a fall maintenance contract." Paige declined it. "This is different. It always is after the damage." Owen said he needed to secure his own marina. Louise offered the names of 2 tree crews but would not promise their availability. Celeste looked at Mara. "And you?" "My porch is broken, my dock shifted, and I owe Owen labor on a rack that no longer has a roof. This lodge supported you most of your life. It employed me. It housed you, until it didn't." Nathan lowered his eyes. Celeste stepped closer. Daniel would have understood what family property requires after a storm. Mara felt the old obedience rise before she could stop it. She knew where the boathouse shutoffs were. She knew which cottage windows leaked and which supplier might still answer. 4 hours could become 12 before anyone named what she had given. Daniel understood very well, she said. That's why he always made the emergency belong to whoever could least afford to refuse. Celeste's face seemed to age in place. Mara picked up her gloves. I helped people. I'm not repairing the lodge. Paige turned away as if the distinction were contemptible. Nathan followed Mara outside. I have to stay, he said. I know. I'm not choosing. You are. So am I. He looked toward the cove where the west dock had torn a strip of siding from the boathouse. I should have checked the cable. Paige should have replaced it. I believed her. Believing someone isn't the same as having no responsibility. Nathan rubbed both hands over his face. You sound like Dad. No. Dad would make sure you felt guilty enough to work for free. That startled a tired laugh out of him. Mara softened. Stay. Help. Just don't pretend it's the weather making your decisions. At North Light, the crew became Dana, Mara, and whoever had hours to trade. They cleared the porch first. Dana learned to remove splintered boards without damaging the sound ones. Luis arrived after his paid job with 2 replacement balusters. Owen reset the dock post enough to keep it from tearing loose. June brought stew and refused to let Dana discuss employment until she had slept 10 hours. The damage took money Mara had intended for chimney work. She bought new flashing screws and treated lumber, then postponed ordering the final window glass. The workshop at Luis's shop became less of an experiment and more of a necessity. All 6 names on Dana's grocery receipt registered. On Saturday, Mara stood before 6 adults holding damaged window sashes and realized she had never taught anyone who could walk away and demand a refund. Luis leaned against the workbench. Start with what fails. That's your opening advice? It applies to windows and people. Mara faced the group. Before you remove anything, she said, you find out whether the frame is worth saving. Her hands stopped shaking once she demonstrated the glazing knife. She showed them how old putty cracked, how glass responded to pressure, how a repair could be sound without looking new. Dana asked questions she already knew to keep others from feeling foolish. Luis corrected Mara once and let her correct him twice. At the end, they counted the fees, subtracted materials, and split the remainder. Mara's share was modest. It was also the first money she had earned from something she built instead of something she kept from collapsing. She folded the bills into her wallet beside the Trades Association receipt. Outside, the trees still showed storm scars. Across the lake, Vale Point's damaged boathouse had been covered with blue plastic. North Light's name appeared nowhere guests could see. Yet 6 people had found their way to the work it began. The second workshop filled before Mara had repaired North Light's porch. 3 people wanted window glazing. 2 wanted to learn basic furniture repair. 1 woman asked whether Mara could teach her to replace a rotten stair tread without calling her brother. Is your brother a carpenter? Mara asked. No, he owns a level and becomes evangelical. Mara added stair safety to the proposed list. The fees did not transform anything. They paid for materials, heat at Luis's shop, and part of the chimney inspection at North Light. Mara kept her motel receipt, association fee, and cabin expenses in a blue folder and discovered that progress could be measured in numbers without being reduced to them. The chimney mason found cracked mortar near the roofline, but no fatal damage. Mara paid him to make it safe rather than pretty. Owen flushed the well again, and the laboratory report came back acceptable after treatment, though the iron content made June declare the water nutritionally aggressive. Luis helped Mara install a small propane heater in the main room, with clearances measured so precisely that even he stopped objecting. North Light became usable in increments. The first warm night, Mara sat at the table in stocking feet and listened to the heater cycle off. Without its hum, the silence felt earned rather than abandoned. Luis was repairing the damaged shutter at the other end of the table. He had begun staying for dinner after work, always claiming the late crossing was the deciding factor, and always checking the weather too early for the claim to hold. You're staring at the heater, he said. I'm enjoying mechanical competence. Careful! The jar led to this. Mara looked down at her course manual. My assessment is Tuesday. I know. If I fail the framing section, I have to wait until spring. You won't. That's not helpful. You want me to invent a weakness? I want proportionate concern. Luis set down the chisel. Your speed is inconsistent when you think someone is judging you. You measure again after you already know the cut. If you make a mistake, you get angry before you identify it. Mara stared at him. Better? He asked. Much worse. You asked. She closed the manual. What do you do when you know someone is judging you? I assume they have excellent taste. That's unbearable. It saves time. She laughed and Luis smiled. The cabin light made the sawdust at his cuffs look gold. The attraction between them had become less deniable as the room became more habitable. It lived in small things, the extra coffee he poured without asking, the way he stepped behind her to sight along a board, her awareness of his hands even when he was across the room. Mara distrusted it because it arrived attached to help. She had spent too long confusing usefulness with love. Luis seemed to understand without being told. He asked before staying. He left when she said she needed to study. He never described North Light as theirs. When he stood to go that night, Mara walked him to the porch. You could stay, she said. He looked toward the lake, then back at her. Because of the weather? The weather is judgmental, dangerous. He touched her face with one cold hand and waited. Mara kissed him first. It was not cinematic. Her nose bumped his, and the porch board beneath Luis's foot squeaked at the worst possible moment. They both laughed against each other. Then the laughter softened, and for once Mara did not feel required to turn tenderness into a promise. Luis stayed. Before dawn, she woke with his hand loose around her wrist and the heater clicking on in the next room. The cabin was still expensive, crooked, and full of obligations. It was also warm. Mara passed the assessment on Tuesday. Her framing score was higher than her finish score, which offended Luis enough that he checked the rubric twice. She entered the winter practical as a returning trainee and began spending 2 evenings a week in Traverse City. The drive strained her failing car, so Owen traded her the use of his old pickup in exchange for completing the rack over slip 8. Every solution created more work. Mara began to like that kind of balance. June came to North Light on a Thursday carrying onions, celery, and an expression that usually predicted criticism. We're testing soup quantities, she announced. For what? You wrote winter meals in the margin of Elise's book. I wrote a question mark after it. Punctuation is not policy. They cooked while Mara repaired drawers from the second sleeping room. June chopped onions into exact furious squares. The black kitchen notebook lay open beside the stove. Near the back, Mara had found several pages of meal plans from the last winter North Light operated. One date had been circled in Elise's hand. Beside it, she had written, Ask Daniel again, about Mara. No other explanation followed. Mara had avoided the line for 3 days. Now she turned the book toward June. What was she asking? June's knife stopped. You know, Mara said, I know several things I'd prefer not to. Pick this one. June scraped the onions into the pot. Elise wanted Daniel to give her your contact information. She had my number, not after you changed it. I sent her the new one. To where? Mara remembered the envelope she had left on Daniel's desk, because she did not know Elise's latest address. Her father had said he would forward it. How old was I? 19. The same year Mara began taking evening woodworking classes. The same year Elise sent a birthday card 3 months late, and Daniel said she had probably forgotten again. Did she come here? To Bellwether. She stayed at my house. Why didn't she come to the lodge? She did. The spoon in Mara's hand struck the side of the pot. June continued quietly. Daniel met us in the parking lot. Elise wanted to speak to you. He said you had made progress and contact would set you back. Progress from what? From her. And you accepted that? No. We argued. Daniel said you wanted nothing to do with her, and had asked him not to give out your information. Mara felt 19 again, in the ugliest way. Not young, but embarrassed by how desperately she had waited for the phone. She believed him? Elise believed whatever matched her fear. She thought she had damaged things beyond repair. Daniel knew that. What happened? He promised to tell you she came and give you her number. Mara gripped the counter. He didn't. I know. You don't know. You assume. I called him 2 weeks later. But you didn't call me. June's face drew inward. You had the lodge number, Mara said. Everyone had the lodge number. I told myself he was your father, that pushing around him would make things worse. You told me everybody was paid, according to which veil they wanted to please. Yes. Were you? June looked at her without defense. Sometimes fear pays too. The answer was so plain, Mara could not throw it back. June turned off the burner beneath the soup. I should have called you. Mara walked outside. Snow had begun falling in small, hard grains. It collected in the seams of the repaired porch and on the cut stump where the storm-damaged railing had been removed. She put both hands on the cold cedar post. Daniel had not simply failed to connect them. He had watched Mara believe herself unwanted because that belief kept her near him. She wanted to hate him cleanly. Instead, she remembered his thin fingers gripping hers after surgery, the way he taught her to read weather on the lake, the sweater around her shoulders. Love remained in the body after evidence made it humiliating. June came onto the porch but stayed by the door. Did my mother know I never got the message? No. She died thinking I chose not to call. Yes. The honesty hurt more than comfort could have. Mara wiped her face with her sleeve. I don't forgive you. I didn't come for that. Why did you come? To stop letting Daniel decide what you knew. They stood in the falling snow until the soup began to scorch. The old lobby map arrived 2 days later. Nathan carried it across in the Vale Point workboat, wrapped in moving blankets. It was nearly 6 feet wide, and awkward enough that he had to walk sideways up the slope. What are you doing? Mara asked. Paige replaced it. With what? A digital display showing winter packages. Mara pulled back one blanket. Daniel's painted lake appeared, its far shore scarred where North Light had been scraped away. This belongs to the lodge. Paige put it beside the dumpster. That does not make it yours, I asked. She said she never wanted to see it again. Together, they carried it inside and leaned it against the long wall. The room seemed smaller, with Daniel's version of the lake filling it. Nathan stood before the painted scar. I heard Mom tell Paige to pack you, he said. Mara waited. The morning of the funeral. I said it was too soon. Mom said there would never be a good time. Then I went to check the dining room. You walked away. Yes. You could have stopped it. I could have made it harder. That isn't the same. No. He looked at the map. I kept thinking if I wasn't the person doing the cruel thing, I was still a good person. Mara folded the moving blanket. I'm not forgiving you because you brought me trash Paige didn't want. I know. If you want to help, you start at the beginning. What's the beginning? She handed him the blue expense folder. Enter every receipt. Owen pays slowly, Dana rounds numbers, and June considers accounting a criticism of her character. Nathan opened the folder. This is bookkeeping. Yes, I manage events and purchasing, then try numbers without a title. He came back the next week. Across the lake, Vale Point reopened for winter with discounted packages, temporary staff, and photographs of fires Daniel had once insisted be lit by 4 every afternoon. The first weekend produced frozen pipes in Cottage 2, delayed meals, and guests asking why the promised snowshoe guide had never arrived. Nathan entered North Light's receipts at the long table while answering Paige's calls in shorter and shorter sentences. The third time, he turned off his phone. Then Celeste and Paige came through the blue door, carrying a leather presentation folder. Celeste looked at the restored kitchen, the lists of upcoming workshops, and the adults repairing chairs beside the fire. We need to discuss a partnership, she said. Paige placed the folder on the table. On its cover, embossed in silver, were the words, Vale Point Heritage Experience. No one reached for the folder. Dana continued sanding the chair arm in her lap. A retired accountant named Marlene, who had paid for the furniture session, looked between Celeste and Mara with the alert pleasure of someone discovering her class fee included theater. Mara set down her scraper. We have 40 minutes left, she said. You can wait by the fire or come back after 4. Paige looked at the adults around the table. This is family business. This is paid time. The distinction landed. Celeste removed her gloves. We'll wait. Paige did not sit. She walked around North Light, examining the work as if preparing a list of deficiencies. She paused at the propane heater, the restored pantry, and the old lobby map leaning against the wall. Her face hardened when she saw Nathan entering receipts beside the stove. You said you were checking supplier reports, she said. I did that this morning. You didn't say you were coming here. You didn't ask. I shouldn't need to ask where my manager is during business hours. Nathan looked at Mara's blue folder, then at Paige. I'm off today. Paige gave a short, disbelieving laugh. Everyone has become very interested in being off. Mara turned back to the class. She demonstrated how to test a chair joint before applying glue, then had each participant explain what failed and why. Dana's chair had a split stretcher. Marlene's had 3 previous repairs, all enthusiastic and 2 actively harmful. By 4, the chairs were clamped, labeled, and lined against the wall. The participants put on coats, thanked Mara, and left discussing whether they could bring tables to the next session. Paige watched them go. How much did they pay? Enough to cover instruction, heat, materials, and the people working. People? Celeste asked. Dana helped prepare. Luis milled replacement stock. June handles food when we serve it. You pay June? Paige sounded astonished. When she lets me? From 6 chairs? Today isn't supporting the whole cabin. It's one piece. Paige opened the leather folder. Inside were color renderings of Vale Point in winter. Fires glowed in every photograph. Wine glasses stood beside plaid blankets. One page showed North Light under snow, though the photograph had been taken from so far away that none of the damage appeared. Across the top, silver lettering read, "Return to the authentic North." Mara turned the page. The proposal made North Light an exclusive Vale Point experience. Lodge guests would be transported across for workshops, heritage meals, and curated encounters with regional craft. Mara would receive a management fee. Vale Point would control pricing, scheduling, advertising, guest communication, and photography. The agreement included an option for Celeste to purchase the cabin after 2 years. You used a picture of my house before asking me, Mara said. It's a concept draft, Paige replied. Who took the picture? Nathan. Nathan looked up sharply. For the storm assessment. Paige ignored him. The winter packages aren't converting. Guests want an activity with a story behind it. You need reliable bookings. We need a differentiated experience. Guests can register for workshops now. 6 people repairing chairs is not a business model. It isn't pretending to be one yet. Celeste leaned forward. Mara, this could give North Light stability. Insurance, transportation, reservation systems, access to our customer base. I ran your reservation system. Access comes with conditions. All business comes with conditions. Then why does this say family partnership instead of service contract? Paige's eyes flashed. Because we are family. Family put my wet toothbrush in a suitcase. Are you going to use that forever? No. I used the toothbrush until the bristles bent. Marlene, lingering near the door while buttoning her coat, made a sound suspiciously like a cough. Dana opened the door for her. When the last participant was gone, Mara closed the folder. I'm not doing this. Celeste did not move. You haven't considered it. I have spent months considering exactly this arrangement. Vale Point owns the guests. Vale Point sets the schedule. I provide the work, the history, and the people who make it feel real. You receive a fee, Paige said, until you decide someone else can do it cheaper. That is unfair. You cut Dana after 12 seasons. Occupancy required, you fired Luis, postponed the dock cable, and replaced knowledge with line items. North Light exists because people know how to do things and trust they'll be treated fairly. I won't hand that to you for silver lettering. Paige's composure broke at the edges. You think you built all this alone? No. You took former staff, supplier contacts, lodge methods. I wrote down every hour anyone gave. Your mother tried this. It failed. The room went quiet. Mara looked at the black kitchen book beside the stove. It was closed because it didn't support itself. Sometimes it did. Sometimes the lodge carried it. Exactly. And sometimes North Light carried the lodge. Paige glanced at Celeste, but Celeste did not help. Mara continued. It stored food when the furnace failed. It kept people working. It repaired the things Vale Point would have thrown away. Dad removed it from the map because keeping it there meant admitting it had value he didn't control. You made that story from notebooks and people who resented him. I made it from the roof, the pantry, the payroll lists, and the fact that all of you wanted this place back before I had running water. Celeste's hands folded tightly in her lap. Paige stood. Fine, keep your cabin. But stop acting as if our difficulties prove you were right. I don't want Vale Point to fail. You could help prevent it. I did. For years. Nathan closed the blue folder of receipts. Paige, he said, North Light isn't why the winter reopening failed. She turned on him. You work for me. I work for the lodge. Same thing. No, it shouldn't be. He removed the master keys from his pocket and placed them on the table. Celeste went still. Nathan, I'll finish the supplier transitions. I'll close out the event accounts. After that, I'm done. Paige stared at the keys. To do what? Enter receipts in a cabin? To start? Mom, say something. Celeste looked from one adult child to another, and Mara saw the trap family's certainty had set for her. Celeste could command Nathan back, defend Paige, accuse Mara, invoke Daniel. Every old tool remained available. Instead, she said, "He has given notice." Paige's face changed. She picked up the keys and left without closing the blue door behind her. Celeste stayed. Mara waited beside the table. Nathan took the expense folder into the pantry, creating privacy so obviously that it became its own form of eavesdropping. "Was Elise right?" Mara asked, "when she told you the marriage was over?" Celeste stared at the silver folder. "She told me Daniel had been gone from the marriage for years. She did not say I should take him. That sounds like my mother. She was furious with me. She was also furious with him, with herself, with the lodge, with the weather. Elise could make anger feel like a public utility." Mara almost smiled. Celeste looked toward June's photograph. "Daniel and I told ourselves we were the practical ones. We kept the business. We paid the loans. We stayed. After enough years, staying began to feel like proof that every choice we made had been necessary, including erasing this place. I hated North Light. Why? Because Daniel was different here, not better, less certain." Celeste's gaze moved to the painted map. Every time something went wrong at Vale Point, he remembered how Elise would have done it. Every time he praised me for being sensible, I wondered whether he meant unlike her. "So, you wanted it gone?" "Yes. And when he left it to me, I thought he had made Elise present in my life one final time." Celeste's honesty did not absolve her. It did something more difficult. It made her human without making her harmless. "You put me outside," Mara said. "I did. One suitcase. I was angry with Daniel. You were there to receive it." Mara let the sentence stand. Celeste rose and put on her gloves. "The offer remains open." "No, I assumed." At the door, Mara said, "Regret doesn't buy access." Celeste looked back. "No." She left the presentation folder on the table, but Mara carried it to the porch and handed it through the open boat window. Vale Point did not collapse. It did something less dramatic and more expensive. Paige canceled 2 winter weekends, closed 4 cottages until spring, and hired local tradespeople at rates she had previously called unreasonable. She sold the decorative lobby furniture ordered for the Heritage campaign and used the money to repair the boathouse. Dale returned to full hours. Rob came back only after Paige agreed that maintenance schedules would include the people expected to perform them. Dana did not return. She began organizing Northlight's workshops, setting prices with a caution Mara sometimes found maddening. June taught winter kitchen sessions under the condition that no brochure used the word rustic. Owen offered boat maintenance classes at the marina and collected his barter debts with interest measured in coffee. Nathan worked at a folding table in Northlight's pantry. He complained about the chair, the weak signal, and June's bookkeeping. Mara paid him for 12 hours a week, refused to call him director of anything, and watched him become unexpectedly good at asking people what they needed before building a spreadsheet. Luis remained irritating. He also remained. Mara completed the winter practical in March. She failed one-time trim exercise, repeated it, and passed. Her certificate arrived in a cardboard envelope that Northlight's squirrel attempted to chew before she framed it above the workbench. By summer, the cabin still had unfinished rooms. The porch posts did not match. The dock was safe but ugly. Mara owed Luis money, Owen labor, Dana half a floor inspection, and June 6 quarts of tomato soup. The work supported itself carefully. Not every workshop filled. Some weeks Mara earned more repairing boats and building tables than teaching. Northlight became a home, a shop, and a place where adults arrived with broken things and learned enough to carry them away sound. Mara hung Daniel's old map on the long wall without repainting the scar. Beside it, she mounted a new map drawn in her own hand. It showed the safe channels, shallow water, winter landing, workshop, pump, and path to the rise where a phone signal sometimes appeared. She wrote the names of the coves people actually used and marked the dangerous rocks Daniel's map had favored hiding for elegance. At the center, she painted Northlight in blue. Beneath it, in smaller letters, she wrote, "Begun by Elise Vale, restored by Mara Vale and everyone who returned." She stepped back with the brush still in her hand. Daniel's green sweater hung over a chair, its cuff patched where she had worn it thin. June's photograph stood on the mantel, not as a shrine, but among ordinary things. A receipt, a jar of screws, Luis's coffee cup. Outside, a boat motor approached. Dana called from the dock that the afternoon group had arrived early. Owen shouted that someone had tied a terrible knot. Luis asked where Mara wanted the new lumber. In the shed, she called, not against the north wall. She went to the bedroom for her work gloves. The suitcase lay beneath the bed. Mara still had not thrown it away. Its zipper was repaired, the funeral grit cleaned from the wheels, and nothing waited inside it. She left it empty, closed the door, and went out to meet the people coming up from the lake.